Good morning, everybody. I apologize for being a little bit late. I wanted to get us started here. So I'm going to call our work session to order. It's the Board of Aldermen for North Topsail Beach, Wednesday, March 13th, and it is one of our budget workshops. So with that in motion, with that in mind, I'm going to ask for an approval to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, then we are going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Flock automatic license plate readers.
Good morning, this is Hector from Flock Safety. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Great. I lead the local government affairs team here at Flock, and I am based out of Los Angeles. But luckily, I'm on the East Coast today, so it is not 5:30 a.m. With that being said, I wanted to start off with a little bit of background on Flock Safety. We are a public safety technology company. We were founded in Atlanta, Georgia in 2017 when our CEO and his neighbors were seeing a real uptick in crime. Home break-ins, car break-ins, you name it, were really kind of going up in his neighborhood. Like many of you, they had video camera footage or ring surveillance, for example, and went to law enforcement in the hope that these crimes would get solved. Unfortunately, the feedback that they received from their local law enforcement was that they needed a license plate in order to find the people behind these events. And so our CEO started doing an extensive amount of research, and he found out several things. The first thing that he found was that license plate readers have been around for a while. This technology has been around since the 1970s. However, it was still extremely expensive, so tens of thousands of dollars per camera, and mostly cities were the ones purchasing this. So he's starting to think for a solution for his neighborhood, right? And so really, that was a cost prohibitive price. And in addition to that, he's found that many of the legacy providers were sharing data with third parties, tow truck companies, etc. And so that's when Flock really came into existence. We're a software as a service type model. Our cameras are $3,000 per year, but that includes all of the maintenance and upkeep, as well as the access to the software. And so that's a little bit of background on Flock. I'm going to go ahead and skip a couple of slides and just dive into the technology itself. Our license plate reading technology provides your police department with images like the ones you see on the top right-hand corner. It provides an image of the back of the vehicle and allows them to search by over 40 different filters, as you see here. This is highlighting, the fact that this is a black Chevy, so they're able to search, by the vehicle characteristics and the license plate. What you can see is that there's no people, there's no facial recognition, and there's no traffic enforcement. But your police department will be receiving real-time alerts through NCIC and Amber Alerts, so stolen vehicles, felony vehicles, as well as missing persons. Important to talk about what this is not. This is not tied to personal identifiable information, and what that means is that Flock does not have any DMV records or third-party databases. We're solely providing your law enforcement with leads on vehicles that are wanted, that are known to be wanted, or that match a description of something that they're looking for. The data is not stored beyond 30 days. This is, what we've seen to be enough time for your police department to investigate crime, even if it's not reported right away. Many times crimes are not reported for, a couple of weeks, for example, if folks that are on a vacation or just don't know the crime occurred. But this also protects privacy, right? So that 30 days is kind of that sweet spot that we've seen as far as protecting privacy. And then diving into protecting privacy a little further, all of the footage will be owned by your agency, by the city, and will never be sold or shared by Flock. Only they can share the information within the system for legal law enforcement purposes. All of the data is stored in AWS Government Cloud, Amazon Web Servers. It's end-to-end encrypted, and then there's a search reason required. So the system is going to require that they enter in a search reason. Your department's policy will require that that be a case number or a reference number. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this cannot be used for traffic enforcement or the like. And then wanted to dive in a little bit into something that's unique for Flock, which is our transparency portal. This is something that we created so that any resident can look up your department's policy, who they're sharing with in real time. We'll create a web page for your department that they can put on your city website or social media. And then explaining the three facets of the technology to you all. So just so you're aware, your department will receive real-time alerts within 20 seconds when a stolen vehicle enters your community. It's investigative as well, so they're able to go in and search the system, as I mentioned, in the event that there's a crime that's reported. And it serves as a deterrent. There are many cities in North Carolina already using this technology. And speaking of, here's just a quick list of some of the cities using this technology in North Carolina. And then want to highlight some success stories in your area. This is from Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. An officer received an alert that a vehicle stolen out of Northampton County had been detected nearby. Officers initiated a traffic stop. They detained 3 occupants and searched the vehicle, and it yielded some firearms and drug paraphernalia that was associated, that was with them. Out of Black Mountain, North Carolina, there has been an instance in which they solved a serial bank robber by kind of piecing things together and finding the vehicles associated with the crimes. And then out of Raleigh, really interesting, just showing how quickly they started seeing results. They installed their first 25 cameras in June of 2022. In only 6 months, they had arrested over 40 different suspects using the Flock cameras. And then want to end with this Amber Alert out of Chamblee, Georgia. We to date know of over 150 cases where we have helped solve either Amber Alerts or Silver Alerts. This case that you see here is a very rare case. It's a stranger-on-stranger abduction. The mother that you see in this image was pushing her child in his stroller when 2 masked individuals came up to her, fought her, and took her child away. She actually did not get a license plate, but was able to provide the police with a vehicle description. Using that, they searched the Flock system and they found a suspect vehicle and then issued an alert. And they actually found the folks behind this crime in Alabama, so 1 state away, by 6 p.m. and returning the baby to his mother. And so really important to just note, in this case, not only did she not need a license plate because of the vehicle fingerprint technology, but the fact that the strong network assisted in solving this case in which every minute counted. And so I did a lot of talking at you all. Would love to answer any questions that the committee may have.
I'd like to just go around the board and see if anybody has any questions. Laura, it looks like you do. Okay, go ahead.
Where are your servers held and where are your redundant servers held?
So our servers are Amazon Web Servers East, so they're in the completely within the United States. I can find out the information on redundancy, but this is just do want to make sure to highlight, this is the gold standard as far as hosting this type of information. It's the same type of servers used by government agencies such as the CIA, FBI, for example. So gold standard here, but also really important to mention that we don't have any personal identifiable information within Flock.
You do.
The images that are in there, as far as what is kept, are images of the back of vehicles, and there's that limited retention because I do want to make sure that the public knows that not only are we taking care of the data by putting in the best possible servers, but also what the data is, which again is images of the back of vehicles.
So have you all ever had an instance of being hacked?
No, we have not.
Okay. And then what's your SLA for downtime?
There will be a technician scheduled within 48 hours.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board?
Okay, just one quick one. I'm a little bit lost on the data sharing. Because on the one hand, you said there's no data sharing, and yet the example you put up there said that something happened in Georgia, but the person was apprehended in Alabama. So by definition, you would have had to have information from Alabama to be able to get somebody in Alabama. So if you're not sharing data, okay, are you saying you just access a national database? You access it, but you don't share it? Because in that case, the people in Alabama must have been sharing it with you, right?
No, so that's a great question. So your department will own its data, right? And so they can share information with other law enforcement. For example, in that case, that was an Amber Alert, but they were able to search the cameras in their area, in the vicinity, to find that suspect vehicle and then put out that Amber Alert associated with that vehicle and plate.
Any additional questions from the board? Yes, sir.
I've got kind of a practical question. In basically North Topsail Beach, we've got like 11 miles of main thoroughfare. And if a camera spots a license plate that is to a suspect vehicle, does it give the direction of travel and the estimated speed of travel? How do local law enforcement actually find that vehicle?
Yeah, so the cameras are placed, looking at the rear of vehicles, and then every image will be tagged basically with a direction. So let's say Main Street northbound. They won't provide a speed. There's no speed associated with the cameras, but departments, let's say they put out an alert and they have multiple cameras on one street that using policing. I would say, I guess not technologies, but policing practices, excuse me, will estimate where the vehicle is and as they try to locate it.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, sir. We appreciate your time this morning.
And thank you all, and thank you for the questions.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is actually a break. Do we need a break or can we keep going? I prefer to keep going. Okay. Alice, did you need it there for a reason?
We'll have Chief come up and talk about the program.
Okay.
Let me answer some further questions for you. First, I'll say I'm having a hard time with the pollen today. So
Oh, it's bad,
breathing
yeah.
A little bit bad. I want to give
And
you
move
one.
the microphone back toward you.
I want to give you one success story from here, which happened yesterday. Day before yesterday, there was a attempted murder in Sneed's Ferry. Yesterday, the Onslow County Sheriff's Office put the data out. Now, we could have put that data into this system and watched it happen here if the vehicle had come through. So what they did was they went to Chadwick Acres, and Chadwick Acres has a flock camera. They accessed the data that Chadwick Acres let them have and got the vehicle and a suspect. The vehicle, that information was put out, and then we all went looking for the vehicle. The vehicle was found in Holly Ridge.
So
and
was
he
that,
arrested.
that flock camera, Chief, is that the neighborhood's camera?
That's the
So it's
neighborhood
not
camera.
Onslow County, it's just the neighborhood that put it up?
Right. And that's happening, a lot of HOAs are purchasing these too. And they can let the local police departments access to data. They can choose to let you, they can choose not to let you.
So-
I can't just access data from that unless we ask for it.
So one of my concerns when I was listening to it is the 30-day retention, because we all know somebody is not going to go for their final trial within 30 days. So are you able to keep,
Oh, we can.
you
with
can
the-
download and keep that specific?
The body cams that we have now,
Mm-hmm.
the Axon cameras, we can download the information to that and send it to the DA's office.
So you can do that with these cameras as well?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
We can do that. They'll integrate with our Axon cameras.
okay. Does anybody else have questions for Chief? Go ahead, sir.
How do you do traffic counts in the summer season to know how many vehicles we have coming in and
Don't
into
even-
town, vacation visitors and so forth?
The only ones that we've been through like DOT. Now, the new radar camera that I asked for will do a count and a speed and all that, so we can do some of that data and tell you what's happening in certain neighborhoods.
But you have no idea how many visitors we're having coming and vacationers?
I could get you that through
Well,
some DOT data.
I'm just guessing.
30,000.
30,000 divided by yada, 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 so maybe 1 to 2,000 cars on Saturdays when it's changeover.
Well, I'd
let's say,
suspect it'd be more than that.
I was gonna say though, but since the traffic is all backed up, Mike, you can stop and take a picture of the license plate on the side.
but here's my concern, Chief. We got people coming, let's say, from Maryland, or from Ohio, or from Pennsylvania, for a beach vacation. I just don't think that, by and large, we want to be putting the message out that if you're coming from some other state, don't come here, because we're going to check your license plate and see if let's say their driver's license expired in Maryland. Are you going to stop a car that?
It won't give us that. It won't give us any DMV data. It'll only do stolen vehicles and vehicles that have been put in. Now, we could put a vehicle in, like, if you remember last year, we had a red truck that was stealing wood up on the north end. We could actually put in a red pickup in these hours and go back through that data and sort it. We did it with the cameras we had, but it took us weeks.
And I don't think we're broadcasting the fact, I mean, we have cameras now, so it's really just if the board decides to agree with the change in the provider or not. I don't.
No,
think
it's
that
not. It's
changes.
different. Our cameras are different than what's out there now. And it's not. And there's plenty of data out there and plenty of information on the web about articles and municipalities that are now thinking it twice, removing their flock cameras. And I'm going to cut the chase on this discussion. I'm not going to vote in favor of a budget that has the flock cameras in it.
When I was gonna ask Alice if she's had a chance to talk with Attorney Eads at all. Does he have an opinion?
He said there was nothing that legally that would prohibit you from doing this. The only thing that I recommended is looking at a policy, which I thought the vendor was going to do to try to.
We've already put
To-
one together as a draft. Just
Okay, well, I
if
haven't
y'all
seen
wanted
it.
it. I have it. I wasn't going to give it to you if y'all didn't want it.
So the sales rep that was talking is obviously a sales rep and not a
Right.
technical person, which I gathered. But there is personally identifiable data. And the fact that you can look up the registration, the license plate, that's all tied together is PID and sets us up for liability in that area. So I can tell you that right now, I'm not in favor of this system.
I also am not in favor. The example that was given to us by the sales rep was Raleigh had gotten 40 suspects last year. Raleigh's population is over 488,000. Our population is just barely over 1,000. So if they got 40, are we going to get one? I just think at this time, it's not a good use of the taxpayers' money.
So then I had asked a question in the last meeting, if we don't Because what you had said was we are gonna need to do something with the cameras.
Right, and
So if we did,
that question was asked, and I answered it in some notes I had for,
yeah, I was just wondering if we were to replace them with something similar to what we have today, then what does that cost?
probably just keep what we have right now and do some things with Ricky with some town cameras around instead, and
So
do
just
some more
add to
data
them.
research for you all. The only thing I will say about officer safety and things like that is that if I put something in, just like this individual from yesterday, what happens is the person comes through, I stopped the car because they got a tail light out of speed and whatever. I walk up to the car. It hadn't been entered yet through NCIC, or if it has, the dispatcher hasn't run it yet. It's a big officer safety thing, and I've seen that happen.
To know what they're getting into, yeah.
Right, I mean, so you walk up on the car, they think you know that
Right.
they just set somebody on fire. We don't.
So Chief, I
That's
didn't quite.
that's a big jump, but
I didn't quite understand that, because when I watch The Rookie, they always put the license plate into dispatch before they get out of the car. Do you do that here?
they
you,
they
you
do.
know what you're
but
walking up
they
to?
don't always get back to you before you walk up to the car.
Dispatch is not as
They're
quick
not-
as it is on The Rookie.
They're dispatching everybody else too, so they dispatch how many cars we stop a day, a
What
lot.
season was that one?
So, Chief, do you have a price for additional cameras of the existing kind that we have, and what the replacement cycle is for the existing cameras?
I didn't put that together because I said, let's just keep what we have, do some more research, add the town cameras to it, and around the town facilities, and we can tie into some of that data. But I'm telling you, just like the red truck from last year, if you have somebody stealing things in your neighborhood, it took us weeks to track that down.
So my question is an IT-related question. So right now, we have some bandwidth issues here. So we add additional IP-based cameras. Are we able to have the bandwidth for that?
We don't have any bandwidth issues.
Okay, so we're good there. So how many cameras are we looking to add?
I don't know, but he needs to come
He's
down
got
with
that in
us.
his, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're moving one past the police cameras, and we can talk
No,
about that.
well,
one
that's
also.
what we're saying. We would add these instead of the flock system.
Right, but they wouldn't be in chief's budget, so they would be in
And they
either
don't,
IT budget.
and they don't have any capability other than we could go through some data
Okay,
and look at pictures, which is about what we have now.
all right.
Um,
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Alice, do you need the direction from the board at this time on the flock license plate readers?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we just, Nancy, if you wouldn't mind just going around, because I think a few have already been vocal, so I think the answer is no.
I mean, no offense, is there a reason for that? You just had 3 people say it's not gonna be in the budget.
Well, I think that it would.
Are we gonna go
This one-
item by item in the budget like
No,
that,
but
Mayor?
this
Are we
was
gonna
a
handle, go ahead.
This was a specific item with the presentation, so I think it would be good if we just take 2 seconds for everybody to vote so that we have it on record. And then direction for Alice.
Alderman Plato,
No.
Alderman Leonard,
No?
Mayor Pro Tem Benson, Alderman Olszewski,
No.
Alderman Grant.
No.
That's a no.
So then we've already covered, under the recap, we've already covered A, which was additional discussions from the chief of police. So B would be finalize funding amount for Ocean City Jazz Festival, and the agreed to placeholder of $10,000 was the latest discussion. Do we need to?
We need to back up to go back through the recap. Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
you're fine.
I'm already down. I'm like, oh, the recap.
We need to back up a step a minute. Ricky, can you put the slides up? And go ahead to the next one. There you go. Okay, the draft budget that we're going to go through this morning and present today has been amended since the first budget meeting in February. It includes the recommended employee package cost. Noteworthy changes, as you'll see on the slides, include the updated salary figures, insurance increase, funding for a townwide compensation study, additional funding for legal fees, the fire cascade system, funding placeholders for Board of Aldermen, and that's what you were just referencing as far as the allocations such as for Ocean City Jazz Festival. Increase in revenue based on the projected county levy that we have since received since the last budget meeting. Since the last meeting, we've included a proposed 4% increase in salaries across all departments. This is comprised of a 4% cost of living adjustment. We've not received the increase for insurance costs from our provider yet, who is Cigna, and we typically do not receive this information, unfortunately, till the end of our budget process. We have included a 5% increase for this insurance. Historically, we've seen a 2 to 3% increase. The employees' benefit package includes health insurance for employees and includes the short-term disability coverage, which was approved last year, and we kept the HRA at $1,500 per employee with continued availability to use for dependents. In an effort to ensure that we are operating effectively, along with ensuring that we continue to be competitive within our identified market, which is local government, I intend on engaging a consultant to complete a town-wide compensation study. The study will assess staff compensation, along also with looking into the structure of our compensation. A lot of local governments, and as you know, history, the way the town has looked at compensation is looking at a salary range or grade structure for budgeting individual positions. One thing we may consider is transitioning away from longevity-based systems in favor of a pay-for-performance system. The goal is to attract and retain quality employees by rewarding productivity in lieu of the traditional base pay increase and design a useful appraisal system. So it's not just a basic compensation study, but just looking at everything as a package. Any questions on that before?
I would just like to add that I like that idea, just branching out from what we have done traditionally. It's been many years since we've done a survey. And I think that part of our issue is, as you had mentioned, is just retention for a lot of these newer folks coming in, just being able to retain them. So I think that's good.
Okay.
Can I just follow up on that? I look at this differently, I think, than the mayor did. Okay, this is not just about retention. This is about accountability, okay, and putting money out for performance rather than just a cost of living increase. And that you're going to a performance-based system that says, look, the example I've used is in baseball. If the average salary for a shortstop is $3 million, okay, I don't want the $1 million shortstop getting paid $3 million. I want performance based upon that. And I thought that's where you were going with this. It's not just about retention. It's about rewarding performance versus just an annual increase based on longevity versus performance.
Yes,
is that
but
fair?
It is, and I think both kind of go hand in hand.
Great.
So, we're trying to attract quality employees and retain them. So it goes hand in hand.
Okay. But then also, would this include some kind of metric system, accountability? Because
Yes.
one of the things that, we look at, we do, and you've done an excellent job of getting grants, okay? If I am the fire department, if I'm the head of the fire department and I want a $500,000 item, okay, and I can go out and get you grants and do that kind of stuff and perform that, okay? Because I know that you're looking at all those options in terms of bringing in revenue to offset expenses.
Right.
So those kind of metrics will be in there. Because, a simple one for me, and frankly, this probably goes across the board, is response time. Right? I think that our fire department does a great job response. I've never heard a complaint about it. But if the average response time is 5 minutes, okay, and everywhere else is 15 minutes, you get an A+. If we're 15 minutes and everybody else is 5 minutes, then you don't get an A+. And I'm sure you track that type of thing as well. But to me, that's a metric. It's a metric for police response. That's a metric for planning, getting permits, and all those type of things. Would something like that be in a system like this?
It could be, and
Okay.
that's why we're saying to engage a consultant to do a full study, a comprehensive study. And just as an example for the grants, yes, that would be something that would be, we would want to have a system in place where we reward employees for obtaining any grants so that they're recognized for that appropriately. And the fire department, I know you brought the fire department up, and we're talking about the cascade system. That's one of the items in the budget, and we talked about in our first department meeting was, the conversation was, okay, can we go after the equipment grant again for the cascade system, which we will. So we will be applying for that, but we're still budgeting for it as though we do not get it because we need it for the new station.
Alice, so in a performance-based system, is the staff currently under SMART goals, and can they year to year look over their SMART goals and look at what's been achieved, strategic, measurable, attainable, time-bound, those types of goals, and they can see that year in, year out? And if not, can we make sure that we look at, from the staff perspective, here were my goals, and ask this consultant to look at that, so staff could have goals year to year?
Yeah, staff is given goals each year when we sit down to do the plan for the year. I don't want the board to get too far into the weeds. But that's why we're talking about doing the study to make sure that we've got a fair system in place for the town and for the employees as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions on that? Okay. So the difference in this draft budget from the one we went over in February is an increase of $189,322 in revenues based on the projected Onslow County tax levy, and an increase of $429,228 in expenditures. And if you can go to the next slide, that shows you just the of where we've been with property tax valuations, and you can see where we're at based on the current projected levy. And we've also assumed in the budget a 95% collection rate as well.
That was my question.
And, okay, so projections provided at the last budget meeting along with the proposed employee package reflects, if you can go to the next slide, $278,625.34 surplus in the general fund, which is highlighted in this general fund summary slide. I'll go through and just expand on some of the noteworthy changes in percentages. The first item is the governing board, where you can see a 25.87% increase. This primarily reflects the change in the increased request for legal fees that the board has been discussing. Administration, the increase reflects increases for contracted services, including the compensation study that we just talked about. And also to make note that the full-time code enforcement position was moved into administration. So you'll see a little bit of a decrease on the planning side. If you go down a little bit, you'll see that went down and admin went up a little bit. So you'll see that in there. IT reflects the increase for new computers, and Ricky will have more information on that as we proceed through today. Public buildings includes the cost for town hall erosion and upfitting office space. We talked about it at the last meeting. We have the building that's been being assessed for some erosion that's been identified, and we've accounted for a potential $100,000 in necessary repairs. And then also creating more additional spaces in town hall. Some of the offices are very large that can be upfitted and made into 2 offices, just as an example. Police includes, and we talked about at the last meeting, increases for salaries, of course, but the new weapons and AEDs. Public streets includes the sweeper, the crack sealer, and crosswalks that we went over. Recreation reflects a big increase for extensive repairs to the boardwalks at Richard Peters Park, for example, in those kayak launches that we discussed at the last meeting. And fire reflects the increase for salaries and the cascade system, which we just spoke a little bit about. The draft, it maintains the existing tax rate without any proposed increase. It currently shows a contingency of $278,625.34, which is lower than the 23-24 budget, so I do want to point that out, and you'll see that in the numbers. I would ask that you keep this in mind as we proceed through today's meeting with any other requests being discussed or considered. The town continues to boast a very healthy fund balance. The local government commission recommends maintaining at least 8% in undesignated general fund balance. And if you recall, our last audit reflected 117%. This type of buffer is crucial and critical, especially in our environmentally sensitive area, to respond to and recover from emergencies. Any questions with what?
The only question I have is say we do okay today and we still remain with the $278,000 and some change. From a storm perspective, is that enough to get us moving as far as having contractors come in for debris cleanup?
Yeah, and we do have fund balance in the Shoreline Protection Fund too, which would help offset that and cover emergencies. And also with any type of emergency, we would engage Crowder Golf and Tetra Tech that we have on contract.
Okay.
And we would have to pay for those expensive and then be reimbursed by
That was
FEMA.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. But we'd have enough to get that moving and started?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Jim.
Okay, just a couple. One is, I believe what your plan is basically to live within our means in terms of this. This has nothing to do with the beach fund or the capital projects fund. What you're saying is we're only gonna spend what we've got. One of the things that's, I'm gonna use the wrong term, misleading on this is actually about a 12% increase over expenditures last year. Because if you plug in the 723 and the 200, that's $920,000 that you'd have to add to the 7.1. But I think where I think you're coming on this, and I just went item by item on this kind of stuff. There are a lot of items, I'm gonna use a term that we've talked about before, that are catch-up from previous stuff.
Right.
Okay, but they're one-off items, because my concern is we can't, as a town, do a 12% increase in expenses every year.
No.
But the majority of this kind of stuff is, I'm gonna use Ricky as an example, replacing the computers is not every year, right? The Cascade system is not every year.
No.
You know.
The extensive boardwalk repairs is not every year.
Right, and so what I said is I'm cautioning us, if somebody looks at this and they say, wait a minute, you know, this is nowhere near, you know, trying to manage this, it is. Because there's a lot of things in a normal budget that I would consider one-off capital items that we do not run through the capital budget. So I think, but again, the 4%, it really is much more than that. You're still living within the revenue stream. But I
Right.
think you're also telling us, look, once we get a lot of this stuff cleaned up, and this is probably $1 million worth of cleanup. Once you've done that, you would be substantially under what we're forecasting going
Yes.
forward.
Yes.
Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes, it is fair.
Okay.
And if you recall too, we've done an extensive catch-up, particularly in
Yep.
public works,
Oh,
the
yeah.
last couple of years. So
And also, I assume the sanitation stuff is that the increase?
it's an in and out.
Right,
yeah.
but that's the increase. Is that all
Yes.
they're asking for, is $6,000? Or, I'm sorry, $14,000?
Yeah, it came out to a 3%, they're eligible for a 3% increase per the contract.
Wow, I don't know who negotiated that one, but thank you. I mean, that, given what fuel's gone up when that contract started, so, no, I mean, look, I'm happy with what you did. I just think that it's, if you were to pull out, and I did, every one of the one-offs we've got on this stuff, you're basically at the level you were last year, or even a little bit less. All right, and that even includes, and I was glad, Caitlin, we had 95% collection rate on that kind of stuff, because we showed about a 4% increase in property,
Right.
all right, without a reval. But I think this also bodes well that we cannot, if we have a reval that goes the other way, you know, then we've got a real issue in terms of this stuff. So anyway, I applaud what you're trying to do. I think the concept of live within our means, but get this cleaned up while we can. Because a couple of years from now, if we have a storm, to your point, Mayor, or we have something else, we're not gonna have the money to clean this stuff up. So I really enjoy what you put together. Thank you.
Thank you. But let's continue and see if we can stay on that same budget she's got right there. Alice, I'm going to let you just lead us through if that's what you want to
Okay.
do. Through the
Caitlin, do you want to take over and just go through the capital assets?
Sure. We put this together similar as with last year, just as a reminder of assets that we have built into the general fund. These are items we would be paying for outright. Some of them are used vehicles or items like the skid steer, and I believe the crack sealer were both used items, whereas all the other items would be new vehicles and equipment. So just a reminder of the things that we've built in to pay for in cash. Next slide.
Caitlin, can I
Yes,
ask a question?
please.
Well, I guess it would be this year, but Alice, we had mentioned in the last meeting about the potential opportunity that we're exploring for some acreage. That would be in this budget, not this one.
Yes,
So it'd be
correct. That
current
would be in
budget,
this
not
fiscal
one.
year, not
So we don't have to
next.
worry about that here,
No.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we had the placeholder for you guys to talk about the remaining follow-up items which were listed on the agenda. We've touched on the police department, the flock cameras, so now I would lead you guys to talk about the donations to other agencies, Ocean City.
Sure. So B is the Jazz Festival?
Yeah. The placeholder for Ocean City was $10,000 from the last meeting.
Right, for the Jazz Festival.
Right.
So my question is, the consensus from the board, do we want to remain at $10,000?
I think that's a good number.
Yes.
Me too. So it sounds like you have consensus from everyone on that
With the
item.
understanding that the board gets some tickets out of it.
But it's for the day after.
They used to do that. They used to do that.
I know.
Kenneth Chestnut, are you watching?
And then do you want to just move on to the Chamber of Commerce?
Yes.
So I believe 25,000 was what in last.
2,500.
2,500, not 1,000, was what we had last year, correct? Okay.
I'm supporting that.
And Ms. Plottle, I think you did too, as far as continuing that and giving them opportunity with Ms. Proctor now leading it. Okay. Tom, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I'm good with that as well.
Guys, everybody, so consensus of the board is to remain at 2,500, not 1,000.
Next would be the TISPC.
Yes, and I'm going to let Mayor Pro Tem go through that because he followed up with Mayor Smith for us on that.
He said it's the budget.
Thank you, Mayor, and I did follow up, and I passed out to the board separately the executive summary that he sent to support the budget that he proposed, and he also updated his Excel spreadsheet with details. And so the only feedback that I've gotten from the board is for the beach clean, the $30,000 for the beach clean. And the issue that we're having here in North Topsail Beach with that is we already have too many signs at the beach accesses. So we're not supporting that idea here in North Topsail. We have an issue with those Lexan leave no trace tabletop things because with the real estate folks not being the primary rental agencies anymore, and the private companies doing the rental, we'd have no conduit to get those placards into the rental units. So we also have merchandise here with the North Topsail Beach brand that we are selling. So we really feel like we should not support the $30,000 request in the budget for TISPC.
So, Mike, the only thing I wanted to add to that was, and I could be wrong, so Connie or Alice, please let me know, but I believe on the Turtle Talks, they also provide some level of education on a weekly basis to the visitors about, I don't want to say beach clean, but not leaving debris on the beach and covering up after yourself.
Yes, they do. They provide education for that, and it's all within what is in our ordinances as well. Not digging holes deeper than 12 inches, I believe that's our ordinance. Taking out what you bring in,
Okay.
all that.
So that was the other reason when I spoke with Alice about it and I spoke with Mayor Pro Tem about it. We just feel like we're already very vocal about our continued support for Beach Clean, but we think that $10,000 for us, for our town, could be used somewhere else with the needs that we have.
Can I ask Mike a quick, Mike? So how does that work? We just tell them we're gonna give them 10,000 less? And then they don't do that stuff for us? I mean, generally, when you have a budget,
What we would do
You know,
is, the reply would be that we're not supporting the $30,000 budget item, and if the other two towns decide to support it, then when we get the invoices from TISPC.
That was my
It
question.
have to be,
That was my
it have to be
question.
adjusted so that we're paying less than the other two towns.
And the other thing we've talked about a little bit is the pie is only so big. And so, you know, and this is not disparaging the other towns, but if there's only one slice of pie left, we have to have the ability, and I know that Tom works on that when he goes to DC and stuff, is we got to make sure we look out for our town first.
Right.
And we've kind of been, and I'm going to use the terrible, sandbagged a little bit by some others in this in terms of asking for funds. So, I mean, how do you think, and maybe Tom can address it too, how do you think we can make sure that we have the funds to go after those things ourselves?
Well, my thought on this issue was simply that, you know, the other two towns are currently doing exactly what we're doing in terms of preparing for their next fiscal year. And they're working their budget too. And who's not to say that the other two towns are going to find the same fault with this $30,000 request that North Topsail Beach has found. To your point, I think, frankly, that this is a bit of an overreach in terms of beach clean. We do our own beach clean. We do a darn good job at it. And I don't feel, and I know we've got this big brother theme today with what happened earlier with the other agenda item, but we don't need Big Brother telling us how to clean our beach. And I know that's blunt, and that's blunt coming from a guy who's a member of the Shoreline Protection Commission.
Right.
But I mean, at some point in time, we need to understand that we are in fact three separate towns, and each one of us is, you know, we're all competing for resources. And when we say resources, we know that we're really talking about cash.
Yes.
And we need to keep that in mind as we go forward with some of these agendas.
The only thing I disagree with you is I'm pretty sure that Topsail's going to support this since it's Steve's budget.
Very much so. Yeah. Well, let's see what the other town does.
So what's the request then for us?
I was just going to say, I think it sounds like the request is that to approve the budget, or the budget request that was submitted by TASPC, minus the $10,000 for the beach clean marketing initiative. And
So that
education.
you're continuing to support the lobbyist efforts,
Yes.
but nothing further at this
Exactly.
time?
Right.
Right.
There's a whole amount in the budget right now?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll
Yes.
cut 10,000 next
Look, we're saving money, Caitlin. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
And do we have consensus from the board? Any opposed? No?
And also too, in regards to going forward, you have the opportunity right now to look at the charter for TISPC and make any recommendations to Mayor Pro Tem Benson.
Today.
Today, no pressure.
All right.
May I clarify? So your consensus is that you're funding 20,000 to TIS?
We have the lobbyist budgeted within Fund 30, so that is separate and accounted for the cost
So
listed.
the original request is going to be 10,000 less? Whatever the okay.
We will do is we'll say we're not supporting the $30,000
The beach
dollar
clean. We're not supporting the $30,000 beach clean.
beach fund.
Across the three
Our
towns.
share would have been
So it's
$10,000.
left.
Are you okay with that? Nick? Do you need, would it make it easier if you have this? So you can just see we're not supporting that?
Yeah, I'll read back to it.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the continued discussion.
I thought we had mosquito spraying.
That's what I was gonna say, continued discussion on mosquito spraying. And I didn't really weigh in on this. I think that Tom had some opinions on this, so I will let you lead that discussion.
Historically here, and it's going on 22 years of residency, we've had them come out in the evenings and spray, and they back in on especially the small, you know, the side streets up here that terminate there at the marsh. And, you know, obviously the marsh is a breeding ground for a lot of bugs. And I would like us to see this, for this to remain on the budget. I think, you know, it could be as needed. It may not be, depending upon how wet the year is. But, you know, and I get all the environmental considerations and all the tree hugger stuff. But the fact of the matter is we've had some years that have been really bad for bugs. And I think we need to at least keep it as a placeholder to potentially use it on call.
So I guess my
I'm
only
gonna
question.
weigh in on the tree hugger side.
Go ahead.
They, I actually talked to some people who do some spraying and did a little research on it. There are now green efforts and chemicals that they use that are environmentally friendly. If we did go with the mosquito spraying, I would like to, and I did give Alice some information on one of the local green mosquito or something like that is the name of their thing. But just to look into doing, if we do it more environmentally safe.
So then we can ride our bikes behind it, like we did when we were kids?
I did.
So my question would be the on-call. Like, I think it would be easier from a budget perspective to say if we had it scheduled once per month. If it's not needed for some reason, then Alice can make the call that it's not needed. But I think it's very difficult to budget if we
Okay.
just have no,
Well,
like, there should be so
I'm
many
fine
in
with
there.
that. I just don't want to see it go away, is my thing.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'll let
And, you know,
go first,
once we allocate the funding to it, it's really up to the manager and her staff to figure out the when, where, and how, okay?
It is, but
All
I'd
we're
like
doing
there
today
to,
is putting money on the sheet for it.
Yep.
I'd like to see a list of where the trucks will go. Because while we're saying they go down some streets or whatever, I don't know, are they going into Heron Cay, Calinda Cay, Bermuda Landing, like, where are they going? Sure.
Right now, it's primarily, it's by request. And
But so
that
We never
is,
knew that, like, nobody knows that.
Well, I didn't know that either, and here's the thing, you know, I've lived here 22 years, I've been on the board, I'm in my 10th year on the board.
Well,
I didn't know that.
Let's let Alice finish that thought process. She only got halfway through her sentence.
so primarily, like I was saying, it's done by request. So historically, public works staff, somebody would make a request and we would go on to even private property, which I feel is problematic. And that's what I was trying to get consensus from the board, if we should continue that practice. Not so much potentially spraying in right-of-ways, and we can look at the chemicals that are being utilized, but going on private property is another matter that I think needs to be discussed further.
Well, I don't believe that there's any reason to go on private property because there are companies out there, as Ms. Plettle had said, a lot of people hire companies to spray their yard for mosquitoes and fleas and that kind of stuff anyway. So I think from a town perspective, I have seen in the past what Alderman Leonard has mentioned, where they just come down the street. That's been it. Like, they shouldn't, that would be my feeling, is if we're gonna do it, it should be all the town streets, but it would just be the streets, and that's it.
Well, the other side of that too is I'm sure that particularly down on Island Drive, some of those communities are private in terms of the streets. And I would guess the way to fix that would be for the HOAs to come with the HOA boards to pass whatever resolutions they do, and putting something in writing that authorizes the town to drive through their streets, not getting in the yards, but down their streets to spray if that's what they desire.
But I think that they're covered, I think
Okay.
most of the streets, and we can check this, would be covered by the Powell bill. So if they're covered by the Powell bill,
I'm
then
not
we
paying
are
their power bill.
Powell?
Powell.
But then we're
kidding.
maintaining them.
It's a joke,
correct?
Joanne, it
I
was a
know.
joke.
Can
But
I-
I'm just saying, then we're maintaining them. It's no different than us going on to, say, Porpoise Place and fixing a pothole.
Okay.
You okay with that, manager?
No,
Hang on,
probably not.
I'm opposed to
Manager, are
this.
you okay with that?
I'm opposed to this for a different reason. I'm one of those people that pay for the mosquito people to come out. And what they have told me is doing what we're doing is a complete waste of money, because they have to get out of their truck because the mosquitoes are underneath the stuff. You've got to go in there and basically fog it to get out. I have no problem having a placeholder in here that talks about insect control or something like that, and having a general thing to go out if there's an issue, Tom, to your point, where you got to spray for whatever, not just making it mosquitoes. But if there's something about pest control, I'm fine with that. But I can tell you, the discussion I've had with the people that do my house is, unless you go out and do it the right way, which is fogging and underneath, you're pissing your money away. And I'd rather have it be pest control and leave it up to her as to what she wants to do when it comes in.
Well, I think that's kind of long-term, that's sort of where this thing is. We're trying to make a decision here as to whether or not to allocate money, which is the what, and then the how is up to the manager and her staff. And I would disagree with your point, though, having lived here a long time, and on two different side streets that back up to the marsh, there is a profound difference with the insects when we don't spray.
Well, to get back to the mayor's point, in some of these private townhome communities, the town is not going in to fix potholes and things because we're fixing them ourselves. So in this case, to allow trucks in to spray, I think where you have pockets of population, that should be an option for the HOA to say, yes, the town could come in, because you have pockets of, 60, 80 houses that are paying taxes. So we've got to find a way that the trucks could go in there with the community's approval.
Yeah, I was gonna
Right.
say, the other thing is some of the HOAs actually own the streets, they're not town streets.
Exactly.
Yeah, and not
Like
to be,
Stump Sound is not our street, so.
and not to beat this to death, but for the mosquitoes, we actually have two different kinds of mosquitoes here, the saltwater and the freshwater. And so some of them do work with the spraying in the air, and some of them do. And some of them that you do have to get underneath or even put stuff in the water. So, but if we've got,
This is
I
why
don't
we
want
keep
to
you.
beat this to death.
This is why we keep you, Connie. Yes, sir.
So, as a biologist, I'm still speaking against spraying because the fog on the streets is a one-time thing. It kills the insects that are there, but there's no residual. And so the next day, when the wind picks up from the salt marsh, here they come again. So, and besides, it kills the beneficial insects that are preying on the mosquitoes.
So can I ask how much do we currently have as a placeholder in the budget now?
$3,000.
So I think the question to Alderman Leonard's point is, does the board want to just leave that in there as a placeholder? We could have more discussions with the town manager as different options in the future. Yes?
I still like the idea of just making it pest control and then leave it $3,000.
Well, I don't have an issue with it changing
Right.
the category to pest
It just gives her
control
more
either.
flexibility too.
I think $3,000 would probably only cover around town hall and whatever, so.
Which is a good.
So
Yeah.
why don't we recommend that we change it to pest control and for now leave the $3,000 there? Is everybody in favor of that?
Yes.
Okay,
Not really, but it's okay. The rest
Okay.
of you are.
okay. It's just a placeholder. Mike will talk to you more about that, Alice.
That's right. Connie was a tree hugger.
Okay, so that was that one. The next one was, and I did see Al come in, it's for the estimated cost for the existing pedestrian crosswalks. So I think what has happened is you guys were able to take a look at the crosswalks, Alice, and
Yes,
determine.
and at this time, we'll have Al come up
Okay,
and speak to this.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of the board. So I'll load up a couple of slides that I have. What was placed before you are the two options. There's actually a third or as-is option.
Nothing's up allowed.
That may need to be
Oh, there's the time.
blown up.
It's a secret.
So were they given the,
there we go, it's bigger now.
right. So in the other one after that, there should be three, Ricky. There's, that's the stenciling, and there should be one more. Shows the actual signs and the solar panel. That's the stenciling that will be in the pavement. There it is. So as option one, or option A, excuse me, that I named, that would be it as far as the lighted device that you would see. It's the solar panel up at the top. The sign is actually what is lit, not the arrow that shows it below. and then the PED push button actuator on the bottom. Now, the only option that we could look at is having a standalone sign and then also having a standalone pedestal. That kind of remains to be seen. That's sort of a design call. It's about the same price. It's slightly more when you have a separate pedestal. My experience with separate pedestals is just one more thing for motors to whack or someone to vandalize. So having one is my recommendation. So that's what option A is. It would be one on each side of the crosswalk. And then, Ricky, I'm sorry, but just kind of go back and I'll tell you which one I'm
Can you
referring.
just say what the cost is on that?
And the option A is the 15,000 that I had. It is the, I won't use a car. Let's just say it is the basic package that a lot of the towns and cities have gone to because it hits with the enhanced pedestrian without doing the in-road lighting and the $25,000 one. The stenciling that would go along with that are these two stencils that would be on either side of the crosswalk. And then that's supposed to be white. That shows a border around it, but that one to the right would be an enhanced border across the actual crossing. Right now, as you can see, the crosswalk is just cross-hatched. This would be 2 bars in front of each direction. This is included within the 15,000. So what I'm showing you is option A. Okay?
I'm sorry, times how many?
3. That's 3.
So it's 45,000. The button just does flashing lights. It doesn't do walk.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's it.
I was trying to figure out why there was a button there if we don't have a walk sign.
So, and that shows, again, the crosshatch for the crosswalks, where the signs will be actually placed. Ignore the one in the middle. I couldn't find one that did not show something in the middle and the median, but we would not have one in the median. We would just have it on either side. And the stencil, there's just essentially a white bar will go in front of each direction of the crosshatched crosswalk. I like that. That seems to be something that, in my experience, gives motorists, when they do have to stop, a border to stop back on, and so I like that. So adding that is included. So again, the signs, the stenciling that I showed you, the additional crosswalk is border is 15,000. The $20,000 option, Ricky, if you could go back, if you will, to the last one that was shown, is the additional. Sorry, should have made those a lot more user friendly.
I think that's Al's slide. It's too pretty.
Is the additional stenciling would be advanced, and at about $2,000 a stencil, a set. That's why it bumped it up to $20,000. You would have advanced
That picture looks the same.
stenciling. It is. It's you would duplicate the stenciling in advanced, and it's 5,000 more to. Yes, ma'am. That's right. It's the same thing you would put at the crosswalk, but now it's advanced, and I would think at 35 miles an hour, it would be about 250 feet away each side of the crosswalk. That's the additional $5,000 for option B, which would be $20,000.
So here's my only concern, and I appreciate both of these.
Microphone.
I appreciate both these options, because as you know, we have to do something. I feel like we have signs there now with the painted crosswalk, and the drivers just don't care. They literally just do not care, and they just keep going. So from my perspective, I just need to know which option would be recommended as far as trying to get their attention to stop before somebody gets hit.
These are the only 2 options.
I know, so which one is,
No, are these?
oh, I'm sorry. I thought
Are these the only 2 options, or are we not letting the presenter
Yes.
present yet? No, but are these the 2 recommended options from the Public
Yes.
Works Director?
Yes.
Okay.
If I may address what the mayor has asked, and that's a very good question. I have seen the Cadillac not work, and you could be buzzing them in their driver's seat, and they would not stop. Exactly.
So-
However, I believe the three that we're talking about putting them in at Via Capriani, over at Peters Park, and then down by Rogers Bay, I believe just the fact that they're actually going to be lit, and there's going to be some sort of indication to people as they come, because they haven't seen it
Well, I
ever.
think it's definitely going to help in the dark, for
They,
sure.
they really will. And the bend for Via Capriani is the concern for me
The
that I see.
restaurant, a lot.
So if you would consider the option B for Via Capriani, where you have advanced stenciling and signage, and then you'd have the actual actuated one, that would be a way to go, and the other two could stay as option
Yeah, the other
A.
issue with Villa Capriani is it's got a curve at each part of the street. So, and that's why people, a lot of it, you don't see people until
That's
it's
right,
like, oh
until you
crap,
ride
there were
up-
people
right
waiting to
up
go
on it.
by. And you're doing the speed limit or even a little less, and you've blown past people waiting to cross because you're negotiating a curve, plus there's the issue of people pulling out of the Villa Capriani and not looking at traffic and looking both ways, like we were all taught when we were kids. But the other two are on straightaways. And so maybe that is a good option, to do option B there, and option A at the other two areas.
So, a couple things. Have you worked with Chief, and what is allowed for when someone violates the crosswalk? What fines can we impose?
Man detonated
What
landmine.
ticket? What's the amount of our ticket if they?
But if the police officer's not there when they do it, they're not getting a ticket.
No, I understand, but we can place police officers there at the beginning of the season and get people to understand we're going to enforce the crosswalks. And so it's also an extra revenue stream for Chief's area.
Put a sign up that says $500 fine.
Money goes to the state, so we could
We have a-
elect to have a town citation as well. But I thought we had an option C too, or I had requested to see what is just striping or just the crosswalk.
Yes, and that's what, and I call that, I did name it one, perhaps in retrospect I should have. An option C is an as-is, and we would have an enhanced stenciling. I would put the bar, and NCDOT will be freshening up all of our striping here in the season coming up. So I would hope that that would be something we did not have to pay for, and that's, so the stenciling, thermoplastic is about $2,000 per location, so.
I agree with Alderman Laura. I would like to see, I'd like to just start out with the enhanced stenciling. I've seen in different areas where they have the reflective paint and just the regular signs in most of them, but to everybody's point, the Villa Capriani does need something more than that. But I would like to actually add a few crosswalks in the town, but just start off with the cross hatching, and because we can always go higher, but once we're at the Cadillac, then it's maintenance forever because we've already put it in.
I mean, the other thing,
Mayor Pro Tem.
go ahead.
Next, I'm in favor of option A, and specifically at the Villa Capriani, there are already advanced signs there saying crosswalk ahead, okay? And there are several other places in town where they're not crosswalks, but there are crosswalk signs for that particular area of the road. But my point with the reflective stenciling, and I'm sort of against that, because I feel with so many cars coming out of parking lots with sand on the tires, before long, they're going to disappear.
Just a quick question. It goes back to Tom's point about the villa. On option A or B, okay, we've got a button there that'll make those things flash. But the villa issue is it's the visual coming up. So is the light going to be on all the time and then it flashes when somebody goes in, or it only goes on when somebody hits the button?
That's correct.
Okay.
If I may also address Alderman Benson's comment, that's the difference between striping with glass beads versus the thermoplastic. thermoplastic is applied, and it's got embedded into it, the reflective, and it does resist sand a bit more, and you don't have to refreshen it as often. They will not. They'll allow us to, but and that's what I recommend at all of our these locations that we would.
And what would the cost of maintenance be, if you can just touch on that going forward as well?
Yes, ma'am. The maintenance is assumed to be borne by each agency. It's been my experience that these last about 8, maybe 10 years if we're fortunate. Then it's a whole new installation. In the meantime, what I have found that goes are the buttons. People just want to play with them, or they'll get whacked, something vandalized, and those things run about $1,200. We may be able to install them, but then that, to me, would it usually voids a warranty, and so I like to usually have that as a contract. So fortunately, the contractors in this area will also do maintenance contracts. So to answer in full disclosure, we're probably looking at an additional $500 a year per location for a maintenance contract.
Just 2 quick ones, and then we can move on. One is, you understand every time this gets resurfaced, we're going to have to replace everything. And we're looking at resurfacing this road in the next couple of years. So basically, whatever you put down right now, you're going to have to replace, because they're not going to replace this stuff. The second thing is, just for budgeting purposes, as I understand this board, we've got 25,000 for 4. We got 100,000 in there. So if we go with,
We have 75, 25 per location.
oh, I thought there was 4 locations.
Yeah, there's
All right,
3.
so it's 75 if you go with A,
Option A,
which
yes,
is
sir.
the other one. So you're going to knock 10,000 out, so you're cutting 30,000 out of, correct, Caitlin? So from a budgeting standpoint, whatever we decide to do, there's, between those two, there's $30,000 reduction in expenses if we go with A.
Yeah, I was thinking, along with Alderman Leonard's point and your comments, Alderman Grant, about Villa Capriani, I'm 100% in agreement. There's also a restaurant at Rogers Bay, but as we mentioned, it's a straightaway, so I don't think there's as much difficulty with people seeing people. So it sounds to me like if we budgeted 50, that would cover the enhanced option at Villa Capriani, and then the more basic option at the other 2. So,
Wait, when you're saying the enhanced option, you're,
The 20.
No, but
the 20 plus the 15, so there'd be some additional, more detailed stenciling in advance of coming up on the curve.
right.
And then there'd be the light as well,
At Villa.
just at
At
Villa.
Villa, but the other 2 places,
Would just have the lighted device.
I don't even think we need the lighted device. I don't even want to go that much.
It's just a
Placeholder,
placeholder.
okay.
Yeah, we're not deciding today on the actual item, we just for the budget. So what I'm suggesting is we reduce it from, I think, Ms. Darian, you
Well,
said 75?
I would like to get clear guidance for staff, not just for the numbers, but on what we've got to put together going forward
Okay.
for this item. So I would rather this be discussed and vetted now,
Okay.
as opposed to later.
I still think there's other places that just need
But that's the next
stenciling.
item. Yeah, that's the next item. So for this specific item with the 3 that we're talking about, I am in favor of what Alderman Leonard and Alderman Grant had mentioned as far as it being very well enhanced at Villa Capriani because of the curve and the landscaping, and people just don't stop. And then the more simplistic approach at the other 2 identified areas for now. Mr.
Rogers
Peters
Bay
Park.
and Peters Park.
So
Yes, sir.
can we trying to come to a consensus on just that one item?
But, back to Alderman Grant's point, if we're gonna resurface the road in 2 years,
We don't have a commitment when that's happening yet.
when is the road gonna be resurfaced?
We don't know. We don't know. Could be 2, could be,
Well, we need to find that out.
So,
No, that's an essential element of information for this discussion.
Right.
Frankly, we need to know that. And I don't know how we find out, but, surely if we're gonna stripe these roads and 8 months later, that they're coming out with the thing that chews up the asphalt and relays it down, that's not a good use of our tax money, but I don't know how we find it out.
To follow up real quick on Mike's point, though, isn't that one of the things we could do is, Al was talking about the more enhanced striping lasts 8 or 9 years. So maybe the first shot on this thing, we don't go with that. We go with the stuff that's got a shorter lifespan, knowing that it's likely that it's going to be resurfaced. So why spend the additional dollars for something, you know, if it wears out, but as soon as it gets resurfaced, everything's gonna have to be replaced.
Or if we're really worried about when they're gonna do the road maintenance, we could just simply go with the lighted device.
Well, let's let Al talk about the road maintenance.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the board, it's been my experience that the DOTs will replace, once they do an overlay, what is in place right there today. So they will, yes, sir. The only point of contention, you bring up a good point, Alderman Grant, is whether or not they put in thermoplastic versus the paint and glass beads. And I will push for, you removed our thermoplastic, let's put back thermoplastic. So we're only talking a few $1,000s in a, in a $1 million contract perhaps. So
Yeah.
we hope that we would prevail.
Okay, so, again, back to, so so what we have on the table right now would be the enhanced signage at Villa Capriani and the more basic signage, the A package at the other two, Mr. Peters Park and Rogers Bay. Is there consensus or additional discussion?
With the
required?
less expensive painting?
Well, for Villa, we would still have the more expensive painting. As Al had said, he would be pushing for them to replace that if they ruined it. And I do agree, on a contract that
But
size.
on the other ones,
it's
just let it go.
peanut. On the other ones, have it more, yeah,
the
just
more
basic.
So Mayor, what budget number are you asking for then for those three?
I'm asking for 50. I believe that if we did it that way, if the board is okay with that, that would cover it.
I'm
And
not
then-
in favor of the other lighted signs. The Villa Capriani, fine. The other ones, just regular signs, regular crosshatch. I
But we
don't-
have that today.
And that's what I'm happy with. Just the Villa Capriani, I don't think that the others are needed.
Okay,
I just don't.
okay. Alderman Leonard?
I'm going to agree with Connie for this one. You know, I drive up and down here a lot, like we all do, and I don't seem to have a problem stopping for people in front of Peters Park and in front of Rogers Bay. It seems that the real issue is those two curves on that street in front of the Villa Capriani. Plus, the entrance to the Villa Capriani compounds what the driver's looking at, because the driver's looking at the person in the minivan with the rooftop carrier full of people and pulling out in front of them. And the last thing you're looking at there is really the crosswalk. And the people standing there waiting to either cross from the parking lot or the other way. There's a lot going on there, especially in the summertime. So I'm going to rescind my original recommendation and go with my esteemed colleague to my right here.
And,
Okay.
and I am in the same boat. I believe that as I drive those roads, you got a long view at Richard Peters Park and at Rogers Bay of people standing beside the road waiting to cross. If you're going to stop, you're going to stop. If you're not, you're not. But you got a long view, a long time to make up your mind whether you're going to stop as a driver. But at the Villa Capriani, you're blind. So I agree that we should put the option, well, option B at the Villa Capriani, but not anything at the other two locations.
So the consensus is you're only going to do option B at Villa Capriano?
It's A and B combined.
It's the enhanced at Villa Capriani, correct?
So it's A and B.
Well, B is the enhanced.
It's option B at Villa, which is the 25,
Okay.
right? And
20.
then just paint the other ones.
No, go back to Al,
Yes.
please.
So option A is the lighted at the crosswalk only, okay? And the option B is enhanced. You would add additional advanced stenciling. So you want that at Capriani.
Yes,
Then it's only 20.
20, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
20. All right, and then let's take a quick break. and then let's regroup in about,
Before we do that.
Yes.
Mayor, we're on crosswalks, and Alderman Olszewski is asking about additional letters. Let's finish up the crosswalk thing.
I've had a couple board members message me that they'd like to take just a couple minute break. So if we can focus on, if we could do that and then focus on the item, I think that'd be better. All right, so let's do 5 minutes. That before we move
Yeah,
on to the-
Al, on the option B, you were saying in your general discussion that you said it was better to put the push button on the sign rather than having a separate pedestal for the button. And in option B, which we're going with, it's got the pedestal for the button. So can we modify that to your recommendation and put the button
Yes, sir.
on the sign?
We can do that. It'll probably drop the price, but I decided to be more conservative and say it would be 20,000. So if it's 20,000 for the pedestal, it will be no more than that for the combined. Yes, sir.
Thank you for picking that up, Mike.
Madam
and-
Mayor, may I clarify also? Are you reducing the 75,000 in the budget at this point
Yes.
to 20?
It sounded like from Al's presentation that 20 would cover the Villa Cap.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item, any other questions on that?
Just a clarification, Mayor. Did we, I just don't know, in the budget for these, did it include the regular painting of these things that we talked about? In other words, does the 75,000 we have in there, because we also talked about, to your point, Connie, is just leaving them like they are, but painting them when they're necessary. We're not taking that money out. It's to put in the enhanced stuff that we're talking about, right? I think so. Okay.
That's
I mean,
my
just a
understanding.
clarification.
Alice, is that your understanding?
Al, can you just recap?
Yeah, because I mean, if we cut down to 20.
Let's
then we
just
can't
let
figure
Al
this
go
out.
through and
All
give a
right,
recap of where
Good.
we're at right now, and then everybody can agree or not.
Okay.
We'll try again.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of the board, again, once in response to the town manager. To recap, we have 20,000, which will cover option B at Via Capriani. There's, unless you budget an additional, I'm saying with the thermoplastic, it would be 2,000 per location. There's nothing else that we would be able to do.
What if, so I think,
So option B is
For Via
20,000 for
Capriani.
Villa Capriani.
Yes, ma'am.
The other two are,
The other two would be $2,000 at
So I
each
didn't
look.
have that.
Yes,
Okay.
if you want to add that. Now, it's cheaper if you go with the painting and glass beads, which I am not recommending because, as you know, with the sand and all the elements we have, that's just asking for.
so dollar-wise, we went from $75,000 in the budget to 24,000.
Which is, sounds like the support for that for the other two locations.
So-
Yes, ma'am.
So I think,
Thank you.
but to Alderman Grant's question, so just making sure we haven't missed anything, I think there are some other locations in town that that Alderman Leonard had alluded to as well that they don't have signs, but they have the painting on the street, just the crosswalk. Do we need to allocate dollars to keep that up?
Or is that just normal cost? This is normally something you would do is paint those.
I don't
No.
know if we've done
No,
anything with them
there's
in many
the-
years.
No, we have not painted those.
That's correct. And in my quizzing, it's a good term, for NCDOT, and how often they do replenishment and refreshing, and they're striping. It's not very often.
But it would be an NCDOT cost, not something that the board has to budget for.
True. I would recommend that we would, if the desire and the support's there with the board to freshen up those existing other two locations, then you would do that.
And do you know how much we should put in the budget to cover
And
that?
an additional 2,000 for those
Each for
other
each
two
one?
locations. Yes, ma'am.
And how
that would
many
be-
are there?
There are, if you do the enhanced, there are 5 locations. So
5
one
more.
is taken care of with the enhanced, so you have 4 times 2,000 would be 8,000, an additional 8,000. You'd have a
So
total,
28 total.
28 total. Yes, sir.
That was my question.
Right, but if we needed to add any additional to that, then we're talking 2,000 apiece for additional new crosswalks. Is that correct?
Plus signs.
Yeah, for new ones that don't exist today, yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Unless we don't do
He's
the
saying
sign.
2 covers the signs, right?
But plus signs. So I would add, okay, it's another, so if you're asking about a brand new location with the enhanced thermoplastic and signs, it would be $3,000.
Okay.
Now, I believe the board recalls that we are doing, and we have gotten preliminary approval for funding for the corridor study with Jumpo. So,
And I thought that what we were going to do in our last conversation was move forward with what we know, which would be the 3.
That's
And then
correct.
when the jumbo study came back, then they could identify if there's more that
Yes,
are
ma'am.
needed.
They will also look at enhancements of those proposed locations, as well as remark and make comment to the ones that we have done. Let's say that we have already put those in place via Capriani and the enhanced. They'll also speak to that as
Can
well.
I just make a quick suggestion then on the budget?
Yeah.
Why don't we do this? We got 24,000 we just agreed to. How about a placeholder at $3,000 for if we have 2 other or 2 other places that get identified, so that we take the budget up or take it down from 75,000 down to 30,000.
That's what the
With
number
a
I had
place,
written down,
with a
too.
placeholder, so that to the extent that, to Laura's point, we have at least 2 other spots that we need, do we have the money in the budget?
That's exactly the number I had written down as well.
I would like to see a placeholder for 4 other locations.
So 12,000. Right?
Yes.
I'm so confused.
I think we also
I'm sorry.
have to really make sure that, as you said, Al, that we're making sure when the road resurfacing is. And I see what you're saying about 4 more, but I think I would like to dial it back just a little, maybe 2 more this year, 2 more next year, just so that we're keeping.
So the 4 locations I'm looking at is the free lot on the south end of town, Heron Cay, Calinda Cay, and Bermuda Landing, all which are communities which have density, which people are going out and stopping traffic with their hands. And the problem is they are in the straightaway and the speeds get up and there's nothing there now.
Are those the places that have signs but don't have cross hatches?
They don't have anything.
Because there are a few places where we have signs up and there's no crosswalks or anything, so I wonder if we could just move some of those signs, do the cross hatching.
Yet we have, there's nothing at those 4 locations.
Can I make a suggestion, because we're spending a lot of time on this issue? I have no problem with earmarking the dollars. We're already cutting it down from 75. So if all we're talking about is taking it up
To
let's see,
36, I
to
think.
36, we've already cut it in half, all right? And then we can make a decision at the time we got to put them in as to whether we do that. But if we don't earmark it, then we're right back here for $3,000. Doesn't make any sense. Is that all right, Laura?
Is there consensus with that? That's fine. Okay, so what I have down is 36,000.
Madam Mayor, I wasn't the greatest at math, but I have 40.
You have 40?
28 and 12.
You just said 24.
Oh, I had 24 down.
It's 40.
It's 40.
40?
It
Okay.
is 40.
Okay, I had 24 and 12, so that.
You guys had talked about there was 4 other existing locations other than Villa Capriani,
Right.
and that each of those would be $2,000 to enhance. But they already have striping.
They already have signs.
No, the
No. The 4 original ones that are not the 4 you discussed, but the 4 that already have the cross hatching. That's what Al talked
That's
about.
right, and all they need is the thermoplastic.
So he
The
said there was
3,000 figures
5.
for brand new.
Including Villa, so we're taking Villa out, so there's 4 remaining. That would be 2,000 each to resurface the painting, if you will.
That's right.
That's where you're getting the 28.
That's right.
But I'm hearing that you guys are only accounting for 2 of those.
Yes.
Okay,
That's the difference.
just trying to make us on the same
That's why
page.
it's 40 instead of we had it. Okay.
I see.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with 40.
40's fine, so we're cutting 35.
Yep. All in favor of 40.
I'm good.
Good?
So 40? Yeah. Okay.
So do we need to, Nancy, do you need Caitlin to recap that for you?
On the existing crosswalks, you have reached consensus for option B at Villa Capriana, and the other 2 mentioned Richard Peters Park and,
Rogers Bay.
thank you, option C. Now you've expanded that to all 4 other existing locations for option C. That's your $2,000 for each location.
Caitlin, why don't you walk us through it again?
I was on the same page as Nancy. So there was 5 crosswalks brought up. Existing. Villa is 1. We've already talked about Villa for the 20. So then the other 4, including Rogers Bay and
Peters Park.
Peters Park, thank you. So that would be 2,000 apiece to repaint those.
You just said 4.
4 other existing.
Right.
I don't know what the other 2 are.
Okay, that's my question. So that's 8.
So that's 8. And then setting aside 4 that are non-knowns for 3 apiece that would have brand new striping, including the signs.
That's 12.
Yep. Is that the
Yes.
consensus? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where we got confused. Okay. Are you clear, Al?
I am very clear. I do believe, Madam Mayor and members of the board, that the corridor study will help to wrap this.
Yep.
So that it's a very comprehensive look. I've seen this before, and I have every confidence in the staff to be able to put their consultant do that. And I believe that will help the board and us make these decisions.
Okay.
And when do you expect the study to come back?
Very good question. Town manager, we may have and perhaps by the next board meeting, I'll have a confirmation of that there could be funding available this fiscal year. And Jumplo staff was going to get back to me. If that's the case, they can start as soon as 30 days and get their consultant going on it. Usually 45 to 60 days for the study. We could be looking at the end of the fiscal year having something before you to consider.
Okay. So I believe we covered item G, which is clarification on consideration of new pedestrian crosswalks, because we're going to wait for the study to come back, as Al just mentioned. Is there any additional discussion on that one? We're good? Okay. Other items is the last one, so I don't know, Ms. Darian or Caitlin, if you have them.
Yeah, we're going to go back. At the last meeting, there was discussion requesting clarification on the cost for lease versus purchase for the computers. So Ricky is going to speak on that topic.
Okay, so I did go back and get lease pricing through Dell Financial Services, and the lease total would be $78,405 over 5 years on $62,000. So that tacks on an extra $16,000 over the course of 5 years just to lease the computers.
Does that include maintenance and replacement
No.
during the lease?
No.
So it doesn't include a service
The
contract?
warranty gets applied to each individual computer because you can pick and choose. Say the manager wanted a 5-year warranty, Caitlin's computer needed a 3-year warranty. That's all individual and then factored into the overall cost of the loan. So if you buy a computer, you get to choose if you want a 3-year warranty, a 5-year warranty, and then that's factored into the overall cost of that computer, and then factored into the overall cost of the lease.
So Alice, on these, what's our depreciation schedule if we purchase these? Are they on a 3-year depreciation schedule?
5-year replacement schedule.
So,
So if my math is right, they're financing this stuff at 5%.
6%.
All right, I just did round, it's 5 point whatever. All right, so basically what you're asking is, do we want to pay a 5% to do it? But I thought that Laura's point before was, it's not about the cost of these and how we're financing, it was more about the service that we're getting embedded in the service we're buying. Is that right?
well, it's
We want them
both,
to maintain it and do all
right,
the other
so,
stuff.
so are we maintaining?
We have a
separate-
warranty regardless of if we lease it or if we don't lease it.
Okay,
So that doesn't matter either way.
It doesn't change.
No.
and that's on-site service?
On-site I mean, it depends on which lease or which warranty option you choose on the computers when we go to configure them. But yes, typically it's on-site service for them to come and replace warranty replaceable hardware, not software.
But that doesn't change whether you buy or you lease.
Right.
You're gonna have to, you're paying for that as an add-on, I guess.
Right.
So I would check with the town CPA because industry average usually is a 3-year depreciation cycle. for
I've checked with
tax-wise.
surrounding counties and other municipalities in North Carolina. The standard for everybody is 3 to 5 years, and on servers, 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, I'd drop it to 3, but please take counsel on that.
I'm fine with that.
From the accounting folks, because they become boat anchors after 3.
I don't know, using mine that's a lot older than 3, not this one.
But we're
I mean,
not asking.
historically, we've replaced them at 5 years here, and it's never been an issue. But
Okay.
3 years, I mean, I have
But I think
complaints
you're-
for
Well,
3 years.
the difference is I'm looking at where we're taking the costs, whether we're doing it on capital equipment or in an operating budget.
Right.
And so the advantage with leasing is you take it out of operating. When we're doing these capital purchases, you know, it is in a different line. So I would have you and the town manager just look at that with accounting and see what the better option is.
Just real quick, because I think this applies to everything that we're looking at. You know, one of the things I was gonna ask maybe Caitlin to do before the next is to pull out what I call the one-offs, like we just talked about. This is exactly that. I mean, the question that we have as a town is, I'm gonna use your, say it's $6,000 or $60,000, right? Is that, do we wanna pay over 5 years, 1/5 of it, or do we wanna eat it the first year and do it? You know, it's no different than when I wanna pay cash for my car, or do I wanna borrow money on my car and make payments? That's all we're talking about is, do we spread it out? Do we like the finance rate or whatever? Because what our budget looks like this year, we talked about it, is there's a lot of elephants that we're eating to make up for stuff we didn't do in the past. And so the question is, looking forward, my guess is, Caitlin, when you pull all these one-offs out of this thing, you're gonna show a pretty substantial reduction in our expenses.
And
Fair?
you have the funding right now to purchase them, so I don't think it would be, I don't think it would be a good decision to pay for the interest. On top of that, since we have the funding in place right now.
Yeah, 5 years from now, if we
Down the
needed to
road,
look
it
at
might
leasing.
be
Yeah.
Well, you
more
know,
feasible option, but right now with our current
and-
financial
yeah.
situation, I mean, the recommendation would be to purchase and not finance.
we're in a good place right now, and we're in a better place financially than we've ever been, okay? And who knows what the future holds? You know, if God forbid, we get a bad storm this year, next year, you know, and we're looking at ways to pinch pennies. And let's not forget something about overall the IT piece here, and not to demean you in any way, but we are a small town, okay? We're not a GSA contract, you know, buying hundreds of computers or anything like that. We're a small town. We're a small business, and we have small business needs and requirements. And I think right now the best thing we can do is just go ahead and bite the bullet and buy the computers.
Well, I agree, because we're basically investing money at 3.5%, and now we'd be paying 5%, so I'm not sure I like the ARB on that either.
So is the consent, from a dollar figure for the budget, we're good with moving forward with the purchase? That's the consensus? Okay, you have consensus with that.
Okay. And to answer one of your previous questions about cameras, there will be proposed 8 here at Town Hall. Some in the boardroom, 1 in the lobby, 2 on the sides facing these side doors on each side of the building, and then covering the parking lot. And then,
Ricky, what
Yes.
other cameras do we currently have in town?
right now, we have cameras at the fire department and public works building.
And-
Just standard
Right,
cameras.
right,
Yeah.
for our properties.
Right.
And proposed ones for the town park and
Town
the
hall
town
and
hall?
town park, yep.
Okay, and then am I mistaken, do we have some at the, coming into town
Yes, we do.
and leaving town?
Yep, those are just for law enforcement
Okay.
purposes, though. They're not tied into this stuff.
Okay,
The flock system, these cameras could be pulled into that, but they don't have to be pulled into that.
okay. So our proposed ones here at the town hall and the town park?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any additional questions for Ricky? Thank you.
Thank you.
Alice, did you have other items under there?
One of the other items that it came, excuse me, came up last week was a question on uniform policies. So I'd invite each department head up to speak on the current policy on how we purchase and replace uniforms. Who wants to go first?
And can I also, before everybody, I mean, don't rush to the podium or anything, but, you know. But if a department has requested anything for uniforms, it would be in the existing budget dollars we've seen.
Yes.
So this is really just more clarification on what their policy
Clarification on
is.
what the policy is and how
And justification.
Okay,
it's
thank you.
used.
So our policy for replacing is dependent on the call. So if it's a medical call and they're contaminated with bodily fluids, obviously, it's instant. Stuff like that. If they're working on the truck, they tear their uniforms, obviously they get instant replacement. Our boot policy is we give them $100 a year. You know, boots can range anywhere from $90 to $300 depending on the type of boot they get. So if they want a $90 boot, the town covers it. If they choose to do a $300 boot, the town gives them $100 towards that boot purchase. And then, so we supply t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, job shirts, BDU pants, and then obviously their turnout gear, their fire gear, their firefighting gear. And like I said, if they're working on a truck, they stain it anytime. So we buy our t-shirts and our long sleeve shirts in bulk. You know, it cuts down on price. And then the BDU pants as well, we do the same thing, so we keep a stock. So turnout gear is the same way. There are now companies where, so our guys are issued 2 sets of turnout gear. And there are companies now that have come out that can decontaminate gear. So we're not having to eat a cost of a new set of gear. We send it off. The closest company is in Charlotte, North Carolina. We send it to them. They take all the reflective striping off of it. They decontaminate it. They put everything back together. They ship it back to us for a cheaper cost. Unfortunately, if we tear gear, we don't really have the availability to have it fixed. You know, we have to replace the shell. So yeah, duct tape, electrical tape. But at that point, we do have to incur the cost of purchasing a new set of gear. Now, if a button falls off, we can replace a button. You know, we do that in-house, stuff like that.
What does a set of turnout gear cost?
$3,000.
$3,000?
Yes, sir.
And was the current year's budget adequate, or what were your actuals for the current budgeted amount, or how far are you into that this year?
Have you spent it?
No, we're at, and I don't have that paperwork in front of me. I think we're somewhere around 60, 70% on the uniform budget for this year.
And that includes everything?
Yes, sir.
And so what's your number for next year? Is that in line with that?
The number for next year is 17.5, and 10.5 of that will go to 3 sets of turnout gear, and then 7,000 of that will go to uniforms.
So they share the turnout gear?
No, sir. So
how are you, with the number of firemen that you have, fire people you have, did you say $3,000? I don't understand the math. It must last more than a year.
Oh, they absolutely do. But every 5, so turnout gear is only good for 10 years. That's the replacement on it. So every 5 years, we're replacing a set. Yes, sir. That way, they're at the 5-year mark. Their new gear becomes their secondary gear, and their new gear. Correct.
And I will mention, we had the turnout gear in a separate line item this current fiscal year, but we've moved it for this upcoming fiscal year into uniform. So you'll see that specific line item increase based on the cost of the turnout gear.
Right, because we were having trouble tracking it because it was buried in the other line item, so.
Any additional questions for Chief? All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Who's next?
And we had 12,000 in last year, and same for this year. It usually runs about the same. On uniforms, we give each officer 3 long sleeve shirts, which are about $60 a piece, 4 short sleeve shirts, about $58, 5 sets of pants at $100 a piece, 1 coat of like $110, pair of boots can be $100 to $180, and a raincoat, and those can be reused. Along with the gear, we have the outer vest, all the gizmo holders, hats, name patches, and we do sew-on patches. If you sew on a patch, it's about $12 a uniform.
And that's per year?
Per year. And we turned over, just not too long ago, 4 officers. We keep up in our storage building all the serviceable uniform items that we can. And if they fit somebody and they look good and they're not torn up, We also go on all the EMS calls, usually get there before most anybody does. That's why we use a lot of AEDs here. They get blood on them, they get torn up, cut. So we replace them a good bit.
Thank you.
That's it.
I have an item, oh, sorry.
For Public Works, our policy is OSHA kind of compliance and the vests. Unfortunately, I think the way the budget was for coming into it new for me, I'm used to seeing safety, segregated from uniforms. So the cost of getting, which we had not had OSHA compliant, what they call ANSI 2 vests. So a lot of the costs this year, we went over the 1,500, which is a vast reduction from years past. Had thousands in there. And any case, what is covered in the current policy is that annually they get steel-toed boots. That's what we supply them with. There's no pants allowed. We do our own laundering, and we give them 6 shirts, long sleeve and short sleeve for the seasons. And we supply caps, like one of them I'm wearing now. And I like having 3 because different seasons and different uses. Still didn't help me see that TV, and I still walked into it. But I like the fact that the guys have a flexibility of what types of hats to use, because I'm really big on making sure it's uniform. So we only have 3 different styles that we use. Other than that, hard hats for whenever the compliance is necessary, that they wear their hard hats. That is it. No other allowance.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
I have a comment. Someone at the podium is having a birthday.
Today?
I believe is it today or tomorrow?
It's tomorrow, and that's why I'm dressed in black. I told my wife, she said, "Why are you all in
It's
black
a
today?" I
big-
said, "Well, it's morning."
It's a
I'm in
big
mourning.
birthday. It's a big birthday.
Happy birthday.
I think we should sing happy birthday to the
Please.
Thank you, sir. Alice, did you have anything else under other?
We're talking about uniforms.
Go ahead, sir.
I think that the board should have a uniform, a long sleeve shirt and a short sleeve shirt with our new logo on it for when we go to board meetings and we have a lot of people in the audience like we had last time, and when we go to NC Byways and when we go to CRC meetings and when we're representing the town. I think it'd be good to have
What about shorts?
no shorts.
I will
Buy
say
your
we
own.
allocated money for this fiscal year for you guys to do that, so we could orchestrate a vendor and, style that you guys could agree on, or
I think
color.
when we started to engage in these conversations over this year, everyone had a different idea of what they wanted.
I want dress blues. Large metals.
There is money this fiscal year that we could get you. Yeah, you guys tell us what you want.
Are you satisfied, sir? You good? Okay, any other items?
No.
So we're running
Do
ahead
you
of.
have any other, Caitlin, do you have any others?
Those are the
Besides-
only ones that I needed clarification on.
I did want to ask about weapon replacement.
Go ahead.
Chief, could you explain the weapon replacement policy and what we're doing with that in your request?
These weapons were purchased, I think, in 2016 or so. So every 6-8 years, you start looking at changing them out. We do a trade-in through what we use as Glock. So we do a trade-in through Glock. They give us a credit on the weapons that we have, and we trade them out. On the ammo that we do, because we'll be changing from a 45 to a 9mm, we have a vendor that will change us out box per box for ammo.
And there was a difference in what you were asking for with sites this year? What were you asking for in
the-
equipment?
The whole package was all together with the Glock 17s, holsters, and red dot sights, which is a feature on the back of the weapon that has a picture window for the officer to look through. That's the new thing that's out there.
And just so folks on the board know, how often are officers going out to the range to practice?
We've enhanced our shooting. We have to go out once a year. That's not enough. So we generally go out at least monthly. We start rotating the officers out while they're on duty. If there's enough people, we have 2 weapons instructors now, so we can take them out and go to the range and shoot. We try to shoot monthly.
Okay, and do we have anybody that's NRA RO certified on staff
They're certified through the state,
through the state? Okay,
right?
all right. And
Which
then-
is a even way more enhanced program than that.
Okay, and then how many times have our officers in the last year had to pull weapons? Do we have a count on that?
I don't have a count on it.
Is it frequent?
Infrequent.
It's infrequent. Okay.
It should be infrequent.
Have we,
But-
has any officer on staff fired their weapon in the last year?
They have not fired a shot in anger.
Okay.
And you can
If that's what you're asking, they haven't had to,
I've
we
seen
haven't
the
had
stats.
to,
Yeah, that's on the record.
a discharge. But if you'll look back, most officers nationwide will go through their whole career with probably not shooting, discharging one in duty.
So is there a difference if we go with sights or not sights with the Glock package that you're looking at?
Are you looking at like $200 a weapon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my question, and that was what I had. I was closer, actually, about 300 for the weapon. What is the cost of the weapon? What are we paying for them? Do we have a unit cost breakdown, or is it embedded in a package of everything else?
It's the package. The weapons are about $500 a piece.
Okay. How many weapons are we buying?
14.
How many officers do we have right now?
No, I'm sorry, 19. We have 13 officers. We have 5 part-time officers, and we have spares. All the part-time officers don't keep a weapon.
Okay, so we have 13 officers on the force now?
We do.
Are we at 100% then?
100%.
Okay. And what kind of trade-in is Glock giving us for?
They haven't told us yet. Typically,
Okay.
it's between, I've seen it from 180 to 350. But these 45s are selling, the blue line price is less than $500.
Right. What, do we have any ballpark figure of the round count that's been through these weapons? Because they've been used for range only, or, has each one of them had 1,000 rounds through, 2,000, 5,000? Do we have any estimate of how?
5,000 or so.
How many?
Probably 5,000 or so.
Okay. Okay.
We also send officers to state programs for shooting. They have some enhanced shooting programs that we send. They have one for females specifically, and then they have one for other officers. We just had an officer go, we had to send 1,000 rounds with him for that.
Okay, does the board have any additional questions?
I'm assuming that when you replace one, you gotta replace them all, right? If you're trying to transition, you don't wanna spread this over 5 years, so you got half your officers with one gun
Right.
and half the other.
We'd
Is that
rather
the
do that.
reason?
And,
No, you
and
gotta
what
do
we've
it all
done
at
is,
once.
here, we have a couple officers that are carrying 9mm. And that was because the 45 is just so large, the frame of it. So we're changing, get everybody in the same frame weapon, same bullets. So if you go on scene, you can swap out ammo.
No, it's a standardization issue. It's all or none. All the armed forces went from the 45 back in the 80s to the M9 9mm Beretta. It was the same thing, you know, everybody goes to it.
Most of the PDs are all changing to 9mm.
So this is an expense this year that we probably wouldn't see next year. Is
You
ha-
probably won't see it for 8 years,
8 years, okay.
That's the bubble we're talking about.
except for damage and replacement, which is few and far.
Okay, well, we have Chief up. Is there anything else for PD?
Can we go back through why we're buying another vehicle this year? Because I went through, and the minutes last year for March's meeting, we went through and we were specifically told that if we bought the extra cars last year, that we were not gonna have to buy a car this year. It said, and so, can we go back through that, just to refresh memory here?
I don't have my list with me, but we replaced, I'm sorry, we have,
Asking about the
that was a
Charger.
Charger.
Right.
And, we replace vehicles we're on a 5-year rotation on vehicles. And then you have some maintenance, wear and tear, things that happen to them. But we have 2 Dodge Chargers that we'll be getting rid of this year. We're buying 1 truck. We bought 3 vehicles last year. All right.
I had the numbers written down too.
But on a 5-year program, we're rotating these vehicles out. It's a lot of times it's 2 a year.
Yeah, last year you had the 2 trucks and the 2 Chargers. And if you'll remember, members of the board, during COVID, they forewent any purchase of vehicles for cost savings. And then they had 2 vehicles the next fiscal year. Last fiscal year, there was an amendment for the 2 Chargers because we had the opportunity to get them before they were gone, and the 2 trucks. And then this year we had 1 vehicle and then the truck they just purchased.
So, yeah, and a lot of these, I believe we gave y'all a list of the vehicles and it has the mileage on them. Some of them are up to about 100,000 miles now.
So just to clarify though, you're getting rid of or you're selling 2 Chargers.
2
And
Chargers.
purchasing 1 pickup truck is the request.
That's
For-
correct. And,
right, so-
and we're stripping one of the Crown Vics to get rid of it now.
And stripping one of the Crown Vics to get rid of that right now though.
Correct.
So what is the cost difference between the resale of the 2 Chargers and the purchase of the truck? How much are we?
The trucks this year, they went up. Last year they were about 38,000. This year they're about 48. The Chargers, they don't make anymore. Trucks are working out better for us anyway. When we sell them, I think the last one we got $6,000 or $7,000 for.
Okay, so hopefully
I
maybe
would
12.
say 5 to 6 on these.
Okay.
No, I'm lost. And Caitlin, maybe you can answer this for me. I'm looking at the budget. We've got 62,000 in there for replacement vehicles.
That's
Yeah.
one.
Right.
So how do we go from 38 to 62?
The truck is $58,000. I mean, sorry, it's 48. That's right, about $50,000. The upfit for that truck is about 12,000.
Okay. And then we didn't net, to your point, Mayor, the money that we got for the other ones out of it, correct? We didn't have any
No.
salvage expense, so
We
we
did
would
pretty good
expect
selling
something
them on
That goes
gov
into the
deals.
revenue line item.
We're selling them on gov deals now, and we have gotten more money. They used to sell them on just a bid here, and they didn't get less than $1,000.
So I would question, how long have we had in place a 5-year replacement policy?
Since before I got here, and I got here in 18.
I'm gonna ask why. I mean, a lot of cars are getting 150, 150,000 miles. I mean, I don't know that we need to,
Not police cars. It's a lot rougher on a police car. They also have a meter on them that counts hours, and a lot of that's idle time. And when they start hitting 100,000 miles, the Chargers have been poor maintenance. The trucks are better maintenance.
I would think with the environment, the truck is just better.
Right. And what we did with last year when we bought that other truck was we swapped one out, gave it to another department. That we could give one that we had like 90,000 miles on that'll last them several years, because they don't put miles on them.
Have we ever looked at, I think it, for some reason it sticks in my mind that Holly Ridge actually just contracts with somebody and they pay X amount of dollars per year per vehicle.
It was
leasing them.
It was a lot. It was expensive, and you're restricted on what you can do to that vehicle. And then at the end of the contract, the vehicle's gone. So, and it was pretty expensive.
I don't know for
That's a
this
lot.
year, but it's something we'll probably at least take a look at, because this goes back to what we're talking about with, do we know
Yeah,
what
I
the
can
cost is?
I can put some numbers
It doesn't
together
have
and
to
show
be for
you.
this year, we're talking one vehicle, I'm just looking at it and saying if, we ought to be looking at all those things, going back to something Tom said before is, when you don't know whether you got the money or not.
Right.
That's a different decision.
Well, along that too, all of these officers are taking home cars, right? Everybody takes a car home?
They do,
So
and they last
mileage-
longer that way.
Say again?
They last longer that way.
How do they last longer when they're having miles put on them that are not duty miles?
Well, when you hot seat a car every day and everybody comes in, you have 3 cars and 3 officers are driving them every day, they won't last, sometimes they don't last a year.
Okay.
All I was gonna say, Alderman Grant, was we have in the past, at least from my memory, we have leased some cars in the past. I don't know that it was for PD, but
And I know
we
that
have.
they've talked
It is
about
something
leasing
we've-
admin vehicles and even leasing vehicles like for the chief or whatever.
Yeah, we have.
Or the captain, but a lot of times, like if I had a vehicle, it would go to somebody else. You buy a comparable vehicle
Right.
and hand it down. The handy thing here about having trucks is that we could give them to another department.
I was just looking more at, in the future, figuring out if we have a way to avoid big items, okay, that we know that our nut each year is this, then it's easier, I think, for our finance people to figure out what our budget looks like for the next 5 years if we already know that expense, versus with inflation, what we've seen is just crazy increases and stuff. So it's not something we have to do this year, okay?
And we
but
did a
just as
5-year plan and we
policy-
put vehicles
right, I
in
mean,
that
and
every
it
year.
goes back to if the embedded cost, to Ricky's point, was 6%, okay, to lease, and we're investing at 3 or 4, that's not a good investment, unless you don't have the cash up front, which is Tom's point.
So we purchased how many vehicles last year? 3?
I was thinking it was 3. It might have been 4 because we gave one to another.
I was just gonna say, it was 2 were budgeted last year. We had 2 trucks. And then we had the opportunity to have 2 additional chargers before they went out of stock. So we did an amendment for the 2 additional
So
chargers.
one-
So 4 last year, you're asking for 1 this year.
Right.
And so is this a one-off where next year we're not gonna be looking for any?
You probably, I'll tell you, we'll probably look at 2. If I don't have to buy 2, I always think about 2. If we don't have to buy 2, then we won't. And the other thing you can do is start rotating some of these trucks out a little bit ahead of time so that we're not coming up on 100,000 miles and starting to put lots of maintenance costs in them. We just sent 2 other trucks up for oil pans that were rusted out and some damage that way.
And it was for last fiscal year, just for clarification, to this fiscal year. Total in the last 3.
How many total cars do we have?
Oh, I don't have that number offhand. Got a lot of. There's
Well, you have to have
spare
spares.
vehicles.
Right. We have at least 13, and we have a couple of spares. I have 2 trucks that we got from surplus that we use. We'll be getting rid of one of those this year also.
I have 18.
That counts the Roxers, the pickups, the couple.
That's 18.
Right.
Counting this one.
Right, and the Rangers, and I'll be getting rid of one of those Rangers this year. And the Rangers we got from surplus for free.
So 21.
Chief, do we only have the one side-by-side for beach patrol?
We picked up another one this year.
Oh,
It's
good.
under Beach Patrol. One of those is under the police department, one's under Beach Patrol.
Okay, so we have two side-by-sides.
We have two.
Very good, thank you.
And what we can do is we look into the 5-year outlook. Definitely that's something that we can explore more, lease versus purchase for any of our capital items. And as I said, we have done it in the past when we were strangled with the USDA loan and we were in need of some capital items. We did lease versus, I don't remember if it was PD, but yeah, yeah, that's what we did previously. Okay.
There's
Any
some
other
that you
questions for Chief? Okay, thank you, sir. Do we want to move into the 5-year outlook, or do we need another break?
We need another break.
Okay. Why don't we say 15 minutes?
4 cups, I can't say.
Is that good? 15 minutes? Okay. Okay, we are back from break, and we are about to move into the 5-year outlook, but I do know that Laura had an additional question for the police chief. So Bill, if you could come back up. One more for you.
Couple more.
Couple more.
Out of my ignorance. So, as far as the cars go, what's our radius that an officer can take them home?
30 miles.
So anything outside of 30 miles, they have to drive their personal car in and leave it and then take the...
Or park it somewhere that's secure along the way. And if you'll notice, and we don't have anybody doing that because we don't have anybody that's out 30 miles. What you'll see some cars that are parked at other police departments and fire departments around the county, and that's what they do. They generally, some of them have extended where they're letting them take them now.
Okay. And so that's a great benefit to our officers that they get to take their cars home?
It's a big benefit. It's also, like I say, if you hot seat cars, you're going to go through them every year. It also puts a personal responsibility on them to take care of that vehicle. You're not getting another one. That's yours until it comes back. So, and we have an inspection every time they start their new rotation. So every less than 2 weeks, though, we have a full inspection of the vehicle.
So on our police vehicles, do we have any GPS trackers like the UPS trucks and other things to know where our cars are?
Kinda. We don't have GPS on them, but while they're working, the CAD, the computer-aided dispatch, tracks where they are.
So the dispatch software tracks, is there a chip or something in the vehicle that tracks it?
It's in the computer, built into the CAD system.
Okay.
The dispatch can see them, and we can see. I can see them.
So we can see. So we're tracking the vehicle, so we know who can respond faster through that dispatch software.
That was the theory behind it, but we don't have districts and set up on a big city. Generally, like the county will look out, and they'll also call us sometimes. The county supervisor will call and say, "Hey, I see you got a guy just coming back from court, and he's by whatever road. We got a hot call out there. Can you divert over there?" And they can see us on the system.
Can I use a real-time example? And just out of curiosity, it has nothing to do with what we're doing. But I will see at the parking lot here a car that says, Town of something, Virginia, Police Department, down here on vacation. All right, how do we know, and I thought that's where you were going with that. How do I know that we're not taking the vehicle,
Oh, no.
that we're not taking I'm off for 2 weeks and the car stays at their house, right? If I take a 2-week vacation as one of your officers, the car stays at my house?
If they're off for an extended period of time, we have them leave it here. Generally, if they're
Just a
on
regular
vacation,
right,
just a regular vacation, they leave it home.
Okay. I was just curious because it's like, maybe that was their town policy that they were allowed to, I'm a Virginia town policeman.
some of those I've seen
I don't know
come
if you guys
through
have
are
ever
on-
seen, I've seen those vehicles.
For T. Justice and he's here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, but I've seen those
I've seen
down
that
here.
happen.
Connie,
But
you've seen
some
them,
of
right?
those are on recruiting trips that I've talked to, and they're coming through the area. Well, they come by here. They'll be in Wilmington or somewhere doing a recruiting trip, Jacksonville, and they'll come vacation a little bit while they're here.
Time together.
So our cars are used for the commute to and from work, but not for their personal use.
Not for
once
their
cars-
personal use. They can't have any family members in it, and they can't go shopping or whatever.
Okay.
Like when I was in Virginia, I had a take-home car. I could take it anywhere I wanted to go. Groceries, didn't matter.
Just one thing.
We don't do that.
And Caitlin, this is more of a finance, and for a finance person, and only because of personal experience. When I had people that worked for me that took cars home, if they were on call and they were within a radius where they could actually, then it wasn't compensation. Otherwise, it was absolutely compensation, and we figured that was about $20,000 a year was the value of having that car to commute, because you don't have to have the extra car at your home. It might be something we just want to make sure that we're following the tax code on something like this.
We do. It's not taxed for police, fire, and EMS. Well, but we're taking them to and from home. We're not taking them anywhere else.
No, my point though, if you lived, I'm going to use an extreme example, okay? If you lived in Charlotte and you're one of our officers and you're commuting back and forth to Charlotte, you're not on call. I don't care what we call you.
Right,
And so I
right.
think if you've got it, that it's only within a certain, as long as that meets the regulation, I'm just telling you, it became an
We've
issue
looked-
for us
we've looked
because
at
we
that.
had people get hit with income
Mm-hmm.
with a, I got $10,000 worth of income I gotta pay taxes on because I didn't track what was going
I
on
believe
with the
there's a
car.
form
It's
you
just something-
fill out on that. I believe there's a form you have to fill out on that to do that for compensation. The other thing we have too is when they take them home, is that when I need another officer here or the detective come out, they already got a vehicle. They're at home, they have all their gear in that vehicle, and they come and respond out and they go straight to the scene.
I'm just looking.
Yeah,
I just wanna make
lots
sure
of
we
them.
don't have an issue sometime with an audit or something where somebody comes in and says, hey, wait a minute. This should have been.
We don't, and I get calls from people that be like, hey, I saw a North Topsail Beach vehicle in Raleigh, and I'll be like, yep, that was Smith, and they're in training.
Any additional questions? Laura, do you have more?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next agenda item, which is the 5-year outlook? Okay, and I don't know if it's Caitlin or Alice.
It's me. Yeah. I get all the fun stuff. If you'll go to the next slide, please, Ricky. So we wanted to bring back up the capital improvement fund summary again. We had just touched on, now we've finished the general fund conversation. And now we're back at the capital improvement fund. We did add, you'll see in the expenditure side, the Public Works building project. You'll see in the next slide, we expect to start looking into a rebuild of the Public Works building in the next 3-ish years. So we are slating $20,000 to have an engineer come out this upcoming fiscal year and start the process, high level.
Caitlin, would you also do something, in the capital improvements fund summary, we did not adjust apparently the revenues on the fire tax based upon the new numbers from them. So you're gonna have another 3% times,
Well, we left in there what we've collected this year because it's
Okay.
not based on levy, it's based on collectibles.
okay.
So we don't, I mean, I could run what's
I'm only talking about
currently-
the fire tax.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said fire
No,
tax.
no, I'm only talking about just the fire tax itself, because the fire tax is based upon the number that the new number they gave us, is what, they're gonna give us 3% of the new number,
No, they're gonna give us 3% of what they collect this fiscal year.
on the new number.
No,
right?
This
she's
year.
saying,
Okay,
Yeah, so they're gonna, at the end of this fiscal year, they look at everything they collected in North Topsail Beach and take 3 cents of that number. So nothing with the new levy.
okay.
So it's an unknown. So that's why we left in the last
It's a
fiscal
float
year.
from last year. That's
Yes,
fine. Okay.
yes.
so what I wanted to do is just step back a minute for Laura. So I think it was last year or the year before, Mike and Rick had gotten together with the manager and also with all the department heads to try and map out for the next 5 years what would be the big projects for the capital improvement fund. So that's what you're seeing here. So I just wanted to, that's where these came from. They weren't just submitted recently. These are ones that, we know are out there.
We didn't have a fund.
We didn't have a fund before.
That's right. And we obviously know that the bike path project, that's something you guys have been working on with the NCDOT. And we are awaiting what the new updated cost is going to be from them.
Yeah, I had a conversation with them yesterday because, as you know, I was hoping to get a number to plug in for the budget for next fiscal year. And the conversation that I had with DOT yesterday basically just said that it does not appear that we would need anything for next fiscal year, but then the following, we would get hit with the full amount of $3 million. So you need to be prepared for that. I know when we talked about it in the past, it was less than 3 million. Now, verbally, I haven't received anything in writing, but they're saying as of yesterday, $3 million they're thinking
But does that
for the
assume-
project. And that's assuming no grants.
Does that assume the whole bike path, the whole rest of New
Yes.
River Inlet Road too?
Yes.
I thought our share was only like $1 million something. How do we
Yeah.
know?
Well, and that's what I'm telling you. I haven't received it in writing, but that's what he verbally told me yesterday was
From one
3
something to
million.
3?
But Rick,
Yes.
I guess the issue though is we don't even know if CAMA's gonna let us go.
no way.
They're
all the
still
way.
in the environmental process, and I asked him about if the information has been sent out to homeowners yet, just advising of the process. He wasn't sure. He thought that some have went out, some have not. I also questioned on, well, how long of a period of time do you have to get those responses back, any feedback? They don't have any specifics on that either.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I don't have a lot of solid information to go from other than that we need to start, that the board needs to start preparing for, if we're going to continue with the project, $3 million as of right now, come the following fiscal year.
I really appreciate the heads up, but I can tell you, when I voted in favor of the bike lane, we were looking at $1 million something, not $3 million. And so I think that will probably become a different discussion.
Well, we
and
also
approve.
don't know.
Whether even they're going to approve.
Well,
right.
and I also questioned too, I said, well, when we come to that point, can I expect another agreement?
Yeah.
That,
we're
that we
only
can
out
go
100,000
through.
now, right?
Yes, we're only, we have an agreement to pay the $100,000.
For the study.
For the study, which, we're going to be paying here soon. And that's the extent of our obligation.
Okay.
But I will request, when we get to the next step, another agreement that they'll have to
Certainly.
come back to the board for another discussion. But right now, we have $3 million plugged into a future year.
So it's almost triple.
Okay.
Yeah, but right now, we have too many unknowns, and we really don't need to be worrying about what might happen.
Right,
You know,
I'm
we
just
need-
being,
we need- You know, yeah.
it'll be exciting to just see what we actually can do.
Oh, absolutely.
So, that'd be good. Okay, thank you, Alice.
Yeah, I mean, you've already told us about that.
And just for a reminder, the future capital improvements is essentially our savings for the future capital needs of the town. Next slide, please, Ricky.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Yes.
On the Public Works building, do we think that we're going to be able to do much with that existing building? Because, I mean, it looks just as old as the fire department.
It is.
It's basically in the same condition, heading to the same condition as the fire station that we're tearing down and replacing right now. So that's why we put it on the plan, I think it was last year, as an out-year item. And it's a known, and we have to plan for its replacement. It's at the end of its life cycle as well.
So is 20,000,
That's just for this year.
That's just for.
Is that gonna be-
That's just for an engineer to come in and
And
look
tell us
at
what
it
to do.
and say, this is what you can plug into your next year project cost. So we'll have more solid numbers to go from, other than Caitlin and I just, trying to guess based on, well, I wouldn't say winging it, but looking at what the bids came in for the fire station, but have a more solid proposal from an engineer that's doing an assessment and advising what we would need based
Give us a
on
heads
public
up.
works needs.
so wait, I have
Yes.
one additional question, and then I'll turn over. What about the north end fire station? Are the repairs that we've already done or planning to do sufficient for next year, or do we have anything else we've got to do there?
We've put a lot of money the last couple years into bringing that station up so that we're not at that point. So I would think we still have, and again, probably next year, you'll see a number in for the following year for somebody to do an assessment of that structure as well. But for the money that we've recently put into it, I think we'll be okay for.
It's dry.
Yes, for the next few years, at least 5 years, at least.
Thank you, Laura. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question on the 20,000 is this a structural engineer coming in to give us a replacement idea or a repair idea?
Replacement.
Replacement. So is this a design consult as well?
Yes, but also to look at the structure and make sure that it's safe. I may have to come back to the board after it is assessed and say that it may no longer be safe. So the board needs to be prepared for that discussion. But I feel more comfortable with having an engineer that's qualified to look at it and make that recommendation and then go from there.
So life safety, design, and possibly build ideas from this consultation? Okay.
Do we
Yeah.
want to,
Just due diligence.
do we want to wait until the next budget cycle to have him come in and look at it, or is that something you'd prefer to kick off
Now.
sooner?
No, I'm comfortable with waiting for July with the next budget cycle.
Okay.
All right.
But to your point, Mayor, we have funds available now in our current budget?
I believe so.
We do. We do. Because right now we have leaks in the roof that we're getting, those are getting patched this fiscal year to get us through.
So do we have the 20 this year that we can allocate now, even if the work does not begin until next year, next fiscal year?
You want to front load it.
Yes.
She wants to know if you want the discretion to start it whenever you want to start it and not wait till July.
Right.
Well, I think by plugging it into next fiscal year, that's what I'm recommending, because I think we have, I think we're not at that critical point like with the fire station. We're just heading in that direction. So it's just, this is the plan laying it out, you know, to be replaced down the road a few years from now. If I thought it was going to fall in tomorrow, then yes, certainly I would say we need to have an assessment tomorrow and then go from there. But I feel that, yeah, I'm very comfortable with being able to hold to the fiscal year and have it assessed and go from there.
Okay.
And to just, so that it's plotted on out years.
It's planned.
Yes.
Okay, good.
All right. Next slide, please, Ricky. So here we have laid out, mapped out all the different departments within the town's assets, the needs, the knowns, the expected. Some of these, like the Public Works building we were just talking about, are numbers that Alice and I have discussed, and based on, you know, what we've seen with the fire department and what we would expect, you know, in a couple years' time. These are, it's internal. These are not, you know, contracted numbers by any means. It's our best guess at what we'd be looking at. But it does give a good representation of different projects that are upcoming, when we would expect them to be hitting in terms of fiscal years and rough cost of those different items. You'll see we've got police at the top. We know that we're going to have we need to have the conversation of a police department expansion. I know we've talked about that in years past and even had studies done, but we know that that's a future need, as well as the continuation of vehicles. Fire then is in the red, and we have the 2 replacement vehicles, the one for the current fiscal year and then the one we have slated for next fiscal year. The current engine replacement, we've got the ladder mapped out for a few fiscal years out, and based on conversations that the chief and I have had in regard to the delay in production to actually receive the ladder.
Before you leave that,
Yes.
are we going to need to, I know it's not in the fiscal year going out to that period of time, but if we're going to get deliveries in 27, 28, I'm assuming, Chief, we've got to order that way in advance of that and make.
Well, that's when we start the order, is in that time frame.
Start to order that.
And it takes 5 years to build.
Okay, so now we're in 33 before we get a truck? That was my question. I just
Right.
wanted- Because otherwise we would be committing.
Exactly.
Different. You're saying we don't even need to make the commitment until that time.
Exactly.
Good,
Yeah.
good, okay.
So I won't go through every single line item here, but we like to show this as just, these are some of the knowns that we expect coming up in the next 5 years. Yes.
I'd like to see some of them switched around a little. I don't know, sorry, at this time that the police department expansion is part of our top priorities. When we're talking about the North End Fire Department that may eventually need, could be sooner rather than later, need to be replaced. The town hall is got the erosion issues. And then the Public Works building, which we don't even have in until fiscal year 27, 28. That one may need to be switched to earlier, so I do think that we need to take the expansion out of our priorities at this time, maybe look at it again later.
Before you leave that, just real quick, Connie, if I can. Just to follow up on exactly that, on that point, is I thought when we, and Mike and I were involved in this, we first looked at the South Fire Station, it was going to be a combination of the two. It just seems to me if we're looking at doing something in exactly that same area, and one of them is the Public Works building and another one is some kind of police presence, it doesn't make sense to me to have two separate projects, two separate budgets and two separate dollars. What?
I don't think the police department.
That's where we're gonna put it originally.
I know, but that was, we didn't move forward. I believe that item is to expand town hall to accommodate more police.
But that I would see as a want, not a need, honestly.
I'm not disagreeing with that, I'm
Right,
just
me
saying I
too.
don't believe it's to put them in with Public Works.
Right, but my point is a little bit different, that's fine, but what I'm saying to her is I'm agreeing with you in terms of how we look at things, but it seems to me we should have one capital plan for those type of things, because if, you know, and I would agree that I would rather have the major police department presence with her here than remotely, but we were going remotely, Mike, originally, it was gonna be down where the fire station is. All I'm saying is it seems to me like that's an overall plan, wants versus needs, and if we're gonna look at something, the dollars that we're talking about is $5 million, that anything like that has got to study putting them together, doing other things, you know, combining, who knows? So it was just following, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you, go ahead.
Yeah, and what I was saying is just that $2 million, just taking it off as a priority right now, and perhaps looking at adding it to the Public Works building. The other one that I was thinking, the off-site EOC, I know we've mentioned that in the past. I'm comfortable leaving it at the 26-27 fiscal year, but again, right now we've got too many unknowns going on as far as if we have any storms come up, anything like that, and then the knowns that we have, the fire stations, like I said, the Public Works, Town Hall. I think we've really got to concentrate on those while keeping the other ones, we can't just let them go, but just keeping them in the back of our minds.
You're just talking about prioritization.
Priorities, wants versus needs, priorities.
Well, I think
Just,
Mayor Pro Tem was next.
just to clarify what you're saying, Connie, you said take off the police expansion, you mean postpone it to a future year?
Yeah, it just doesn't need to be a priority right now. When I think of things in
Well-
my head on the list of priorities, needs right now, and even in next year.
Well, this would be the next year's budget.
Right, that's why I don't want it in next year's budget. I kind of want to postpone it, take it off the list of priorities for the next couple of years, or move it.
But
So-
move it further into the future,
Yes.
is what you're saying.
So the other thing is, it's a little difficult for me to think we're looking at, you know, a $30,000 item on this spreadsheet and millions of dollars. I think we've got capital projects here mixed in with capital asset purchases.
And a capital item for us is anything over $5,000. So that's why you see such a range, because we're
Okay.
looking at anything that could be deemed capital in that department.
Okay,
That might be
gotcha.
equipment in some, and that's gonna be a building in another, you know?
Okay.
So it's just
It's
a
an accounting
big picture range
Okay,
of what
thanks.
that is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
So what I want to say about this page we're looking at, we weren't having this discussion 3 or 4 years ago.
We couldn't.
And we are, well, yeah, and now we are thinking about our future, and strategic planning is so important, and whether it's this year or that year or the next year, at least we got some numbers down and a schedule we're looking at for the future so that we can be prepared for what we're gonna need to do. So, amen.
And I guess what I would say is, Alice, I'm assuming that where these are placed in the out years is where you're comfortable or think that expense is going to be coming up or hit us.
Well, they're plugged in based on conversations during last year's budget, based on what the priorities were. And of course, every year, you know, priorities are, you know, could easily change and shift. So this is just to give you
Just a heads up.
a heads up of what our knowns are. And really, it's, you know, it's up to, the board can certainly determine if they want to postpone some things versus others. So that's.
But at this
This,
point,
but this was drafted based on your priorities at
Previous
the
sessions.
time.
but I guess what I'm saying is, to that point, we don't really need, it's more important to have an item with some numbers here on it. We don't need to make decisions on upcoming year's budgets at this particular moment.
And if I could add something just.
It's a forecast.
Yeah, it's a forecast, but one of the things I think that we have talked about as a board, and it just came out of the beach plan, is when Chris made the presentation, he said, here's the 30-year beach plan, and we do not anticipate raising taxes to execute this plan. I think that part of our thing, and going back to the priorities that you talked about, Connie, okay, what are wants and what are needs? I think, I don't mean to speak for everybody here, but I think it's a consensus that our long-term planning has got to include the fact that we're not going to be raising taxes as we go forward. So what we can do priority-wise, Connie, to your point, is very important, because if the high priority stuff has to be first and taken care of, and to the extent that we have to delay stuff by a year or two that's not as high a priority, to stay away from raising taxes. I think that's what we've talked about a lot on this board. Is that fair?
Yes, and to what the mayor said, Alice, I want to direct this to you. Do you need to know any consensus on upcoming year's priorities, or can you just glean it from our conversations here, or do we need to specify a little more to you?
Well, what I'm hearing today is that there's a desire to potentially push the police department expansion out perhaps another fiscal year.
Or two, or
more.
Or more. That's
Let me
not
just go
in the
back.
priority.
I think that you guys have done a remarkable job, and to Mike's point, we now have a 5-year forecast. What we don't have is, and you did it with some of the operating expense and stuff, is, and when our capital budget, what does that look like, and how much money are we gonna have in the capital fund, and how do we use that stuff? Similar to what Chris just did, right? It said, now, obviously, we gotta make some assumptions. We might be able to get grants for things, which speed things up. We get things like that. Okay, we got offsets and that kind of stuff, so all that's out there. But I think this is a very good start to giving us a look as to what's gonna happen in the future, and then live within our means, basically.
One thing that I would like to just get maybe a consensus right now on is I think I'm hearing, as far as when we go to look at the Public Works facility, that there's not a desire to, there is or not a desire to include police in that as like a public safety building that you looked at in the past. Do you?
No desire on my point, and the point that Rick just made about the South Fire Station and police together, the lot wasn't big enough to do that. Wasn't enough room.
There
And it'd
wasn't
be the
about that a
same,
lot.
it would be the same problem at the Public Works site.
Unless we buy property.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, so we're not, so when we go to study this, it's going to be for a Public Works facility only,
At
just so
Town
all the
Hall.
board is,
At Town Hall.
The police at Town Hall, Public
the
Works
police at
site.
Town Hall and Public Works at the current Public Works site. Is that the consensus?
Yes.
I also believe that there were some funding issues with combining them. I don't remember exactly what they were, but I thought,
Well, the price went from like 4 to 8.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
That was
So,
the funding issue, is all of a sudden we were choking on the cost.
but I guess
Kayla remembers that.
And I have, just to go back to PD too, I mean, I have asked PD to go back and look at the old plans that the architect was looking at previously, to see what there could be, what we could look at as far as, you know, bumping out on the side over where the generator is to expand that area, and what those costs may be. So as I get those costs, which I would assume that would then get plugged in for next year, you'll have those to look at as well. So it's not, we won't be pushing PD expansion out completely. It'll just evolve as I get more information and numbers.
You're looking for better.
But I'm looking,
But I
yes.
heard from Connie that, and I think you wanted clarification, is the board for 25, 26 making any changes, and where the plug numbers, what years they should be in?
I personally would prefer we don't, because I think it's still going to move and change as we get more information on two of the most expensive items here would be the Public Works Building and also the bike lane. So I think until we find out how much those things are, that there isn't much sense in modifying or switching this. I think the most important thing is everything's here, and it can be solidified as we receive information, and then if we need to make decisions, then we have the information to make it.
Well, not only that, to your point, Mayor, we don't need to approve this to approve the budget for next year, okay? And besides that, we have no idea what's gonna happen in the next 12 months before we go do another
Right, I
budget.
just wanted to know if Alice needed direction on, or consensus on what we wanted, and I really want her to be as flexible because she's more in tune with the budgeting, so as long as she knows that we are not looking to expand the police department, for example, next fiscal year, she's got that, so she knows she can be flexible on where she moves that. The Public Works Building, if funds come in and she can move it one way or the other. And we also have a big unknown on how much it's gonna cost for the erosion for this building. And that's
Right.
a huge thing, because you all remember how it was when this building was out of commission and we were meeting at the library. We were all over the place, so, yeah.
Yeah,
Homeless. We were homeless.
Okay, one at a time. So, Mayor Pro Tem?
So I'm still with the mayor on leaving this forecast the way it is, because, for instance, the South Fire Station, we may end up finding some grant money, and so that $6 million may be reduced, and we may be able to move forward with the expansion of the police department sooner than we might have expected, so.
That's
I
why I'd
think
like
we
to
should
leave the
just leave it the way
flexibility
it-
to
Yeah.
The way it
Alice.
sits.
Except that I'm thinking that depending upon what the assessment of the Public Works Building comes out, there may be a flip-flopping of the expansion of the police department and the Public Works Building, you know, and you think about when we got in and started looking at the South End Fire Station, you know, all the skeletons we found, you know,
But that's the point
very
I'm
well could be.
making.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
But
the
it's,
good,
it's a maybe,
Right,
and, you know.
I think for now, but there's too many unknowns, as we're saying, so I think it's consensus to leave it be, and Alice
Sure.
has flexibility to come back to the board when she has more information, and if we've got to make some changes, we can.
well, and to her point is on the police thing, one last comment is, she also just talked about, we've got work going on here, okay, with the building right now. And so, but she also said maybe there's a way to expand this building without spending $2 million as well. And I'm assuming, I think we all have the faith in her, she'll come back to us with it, whatever the best alternative looks like. Right, I mean,
Yep.
it's not gonna go, let's go build something.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next slide, please. So we have a basic cost and revenue analysis here. The yellow is the general fund and the green is the capital improvement fund. Some of these are knowns, as we now have the South End Fire Department financing. We have that amortization schedule, and we have the engine truck. We now have that loan amortization schedule, and those figures are plugged in. There's also a lot of assumptions based in here as well. We've got assumptions for annual growth for the expenditure side in terms of personnel costs and operations and management, assuming 5% growth across the years. And then in terms of the revenues, and I'm looking at the general fund, I'm sorry, we have 1% growth assumed for the ad valorem taxes. You will have another reval in a couple years, as Onslow County does their reval every 4 years. Statutorily, they have to do it every 8, and they have adopted every 4 years. So before we know it, we'll be having another reval. So we have assumptions built in, but it gives you an idea with some of the needs that were on the last slide of revenues that you may have, revenues that you may need. So we wanted to show you this high level, again, a forecasting tool, but helpful in the conversation of the budget.
Caitlin, could you, I'm trying to understand the bottom schedule, because I'm showing revenues needed. I mean, obviously, it's not 573. When you take the revenues of $1,573,000, that's 500,000. You're showing revenues needed, so you're basically combining all revenues and expenses? Because
Correct.
otherwise they don't tie.
Yes, that is correct. And I
You understand what I'm
apologize.
asking?
The
'Cause-
slide that's up here, I think I did not give the most current one. I'm so sorry.
Well, I know you don't have the fire department payment's not the payment that you presented to us at the last one, but that's a net. I'm trying to figure out what the revenues needed means. Because I'm looking at, I think it's general funding. What I'm saying is, those are completely different slides.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
the one on the top is the general fund.
Yes.
We're looking at 7.4 million in revenue, right?
Yep.
All right. And then we're saying, okay, so we're gonna have $1.4 million, basically, the 139 is the difference between the revenues in 23-24 and the cost above, right? The 6 million in that's the bottom line. It has nothing to do with the green slide.
Correct.
Okay, that's where I was getting confused. I thought you were flowing down and that the bottom one was supposed to be
Right.
footing. I was reading it as, I can't make those numbers add
No,
up.
you're saying the two yellow lines are matching the revenues needed with the red, yes.
With the
And
yellow, it's the yellow and the red,
The
right.
revenues needed.
It's,
needs to be
yeah, it's
up
looking
under
at
estimated.
revenues and revenues and expenditures,
Right.
and that's how it's calculating that bottom revenues needed. So in the parentheses is where you would, in theory, have a surplus.
Right.
And then in the positive numbers where you would need
Okay,
those
but the revenues
revenues.
needed, to Laura's point, should be under the yellow shaded stuff, not the green.
I did it combined as the tax, ad valorem tax
Oh,
is
okay.
one tax that we divide up into different funds, as is our sales and use tax, although that does not go into our capital improvement fund. So some of those, in terms of a tax conversation, if you were to look at changing any sort of taxes, which is our main revenue source, that was why I'm plugging in
But
those
no
numbers
offense,
that way.
The schedule doesn't foot that. That's my point.
No.
Is if I'm looking at, if everything is supposed to slide down, I'm looking at total costs are 6 million, total revenue 7.4. That's your 1,395 number. You now have a surplus in the capital fund because you've got revenues of 1 and expense of 5. So that number should be 500. You got $500,000 more.
It's
in the
looking at it
bottom
as a
slide.
whole across the funds, not divided up against the funds. It's looking at it combining the general
I'll
and
go
capital.
offline with you. I don't understand how, the slide's not footing for me.
Okay.
Okay, it just seems to be the 1.3 number should have the surplus that you're gonna have under the capital improvements, and it doesn't. It's just the top slide. Okay. The point you're making is you're trying to tell us where we're gonna be short revenue in the future.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
But it's in the out years,
Right. Oh, we're fine.
Yeah. And, yeah. No, okay.
Yeah, we got surplus all the way to the end.
And so then our next slide, I guess, is, again, just an update on the Shoreline Protection Fund. This really hasn't changed much since you saw it the last time. There was a slight increase based on the updated cost of the lobbyist, which is where they live in terms of our budget. So I increased, I think it was by $3,000, so otherwise it would remain the same. So you would be looking at a $1.2 million future projects fund, which again, as a reminder, is essentially our contingency for the Shoreline Protection Fund.
Well, it's also included in Chris's schedule too, right?
It should be.
Right, you see
I'm
what
not
I'm
as
saying? Yeah,
familiar
so
with
we've
his
got,
work.
it
his
shows how
stuff.
we're using the cash.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's no questions on that, then our next slide is just the remaining budget calendar, which we have plugged in the public hearing within the next Board of Aldermen meeting, and then the final adoption at the following Board of Aldermen meeting. Are there any questions or follow-ups or points? Yeah.
I'm out of town for the public hearing.
So do you have any questions that you'd like to bring up now?
Nothing that hasn't been already addressed today. I think we're good. I think we're in real good shape. As I mentioned to Alice yesterday on telephone, you know, here we are in March, and we're almost at the finish line on this process, which I've seen this, and as have a few other people sitting up here, stretch into special meetings around the 15th of June. and something that we certainly don't ever want. But I'm very comfortable getting on my cruise with my wife in Europe, knowing that, aside from the public hearing, that this thing is about done. And kudos to the staff and the manager.
And I just had one question, because I know you guys have already covered, you won't have the information back on the benefits, but it sounds like the benefits you're shopping for are in line with what we have today. So there isn't planning on being any benefit reduction at all for the staff members? Okay, that was my only, wanted to clarify.
And no tax increase.
No tax increase.
So,
Only on your house, Tom.
no, that's all right. You
already
know,
volunteered not to be here for the next.
that's
meeting.
right, I volunteer not to be here, so, hey, that's what,
All right, so then Alice, is there anything else we need to cover for budget we didn't?
No, just if you have any other concerns or questions, this is the time to ask them. So
So
if
I'm
you're
gonna give
good,
everybody
we're
an
good.
opportunity. Anybody have any additional questions?
Just, Caitlin, if you could give me what I'm calling the big item, the one-timers, just to see what that looks like. Because I think one of the things we need to present to the board, staying with the no tax stuff, is that what we are doing is, bad term, cleaning up some of the stuff from the past. That will not be it will not be a reoccurring thing. Because if you looked at what we've got right now, and you didn't realize there's a lot of one-offs in this thing, it would look like everything was going, and it's not. It's actually coming down.
Okay, all right, but then I need a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Done.